Can't wait till our waitress gets here. I'd like to see her flapjacks, if you know what I mean.
I'm hoping for today's special, if you know what I mean.
I just want to watch her put cream in my coffee, if you know what I'm talking about.
Sorry I'm late. I was busy with some pigs in a blanket, if you know what I mean.
I'll have a double order of sausage, if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, would you like that easy over, if you know what I mean?
Well done, if you know what I mean.
I'd like a foot long, if you know what I mean.
I had one earlier, if you know what I mean.
Can I top that off, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're listening to the Mystic Menagerie Podcast, your regular descent into the world of alternative entertainment, art, and culture. Bolt the door, light the fire, and pour yourself a glass of Virgin Rouge, and let your hosts, Dan Baines and Lord Freddie Valentine, guide you through the Stygian depths of your darkest delights. Warning. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the Mystic Menagerie Podcast. Today is the 25th of February 2015 and I'm here with my fellow co-host Freddie Valentine, and my name's Dan Baines. Hi Freddie, how you doing?
Hello, and hello to everybody listening and to the American listeners. Howdy.
Howdy.
Yes, we're back again. This is our sixth podcast, so yeah, it's another packed show with another special guest today, isn't it, Dan? It's a very exciting one.
Yeah, we've got joining us later in the show, we've got Chris Gould of Alchemy Moon, so that should be very interesting. He's a bit of an aloof character, so it's nice to get someone who is on the scene predominantly, you know, is always out there producing stuff, and but I don't think many people have ever spoken to him or heard of him. You know, I've seen him at Doomsday, I've met him at Doomsday, and I've spoken to him at length on the phone, but he is one of these people who, you know, it's you don't hear about him very often.
He lurks in the shadows, you know. He lurks in the shadows and produces very strange and wonderful things. But he's someone who is not doesn't push himself as a persona much. It's more like he's this mysterious character. So hopefully we can put away some of the layers of mystery and get the man himself here on the show, and people can see what he's like as a person. See him.
Definitely, he's predominantly an artist. So from experience, artists are generally quite aloof characters who like to, as you say, lurk in the shadows. I mean, I liked to lurk in the shadows originally, but the nature of the business means that I have to sometimes pop out of my crypt and do public appearances, which I'm, not overly keen on, but this is it comes with the territory, I suppose. Definitely,
artists like to be locked away in a room, just creating art and sort of strutting the world outside. Generally,
we're not all confident sort of showmen like yourself, Freddie.
A show off, yeah, complete
show off. I said showman, but show off. Yeah, show off will do.
Same thing, isn't it? Really.
Cool.
But yeah, it's sometimes it's very strange because if you're someone who's creative, some people are creative like internally. They want to sort of have their own zone and do things and create stuff and then release it out there and not really sort of have the feedback from it. They're quite happy to do that. You get some musicians that make studio albums only and don't really like to tour as such.
It was like Kate Bush.
Kate Bush.
Look how popular she is. She's probably she is the most popular female artist there is, and she'd only ever done one tour prior to the one she did back in November last year, or was it October last year? And it just goes to show you don't have to be in the limelight to be successful and popular.
Exactly. On the other hand, you've got people like Shirley Bassey who are out there wowing the crowd still at 70 or how old she is. 70? She's in the 70s, I must be.
Yeah.
And so there's two extremes, So yeah,
Kate Bush has got the plus that she's pretty fit as well, so I suppose that helps.
I think.
Yeah, she's okay.
When I last saw a picture of her last concert, I thought it was Dawn French.
Well, yeah, she has put on a few pounds, but as I say, a few shandies, and Anyway.
Yeah. No Joanna Lumley. Joanna Lumley is a perfect example of the mature ladies, you know what I mean? I feel.
Yes. Right, so let's get back onto topic anyway, as opposed to our fantasies and ideal women. So, it's come to light that Freddie and I sometimes say certain words in excess, and it was highlighted to us on Facebook when we weren't actually expecting it. All we was actually asking for was feedback for certain workshops we'd like to do in the show, but it was pointed out to us that there are certain phrases that we use quite a lot, and these are, as you can probably tell from the intro to the show, you know what I mean, which I think is probably you, Freddie.
Yeah.
And I always follow that up with a definitely.
Exactly, yes. I mean, if you watch things like Minder, you're probably all those sort of programs, you know, whatever part of the country you film, you'll have an accent, you know.
Yeah.
If Jimmy Now was there, he'd be saying, well, hey, canny lad, or something like this, do you know what I mean? But that's where he's from, you know. And the thing is, I think that the problem is we ask for feedback or some suggestions and ideas, really. He wasn't really asking for criticism, you know. But someone read, have you got any suggestions as, can you please find something about our show to criticise?
Yeah, it's like, can we have some like nice suggestions for the show? I'll give you some suggestions, but while I'm at it, I'm going to tell you things that you're doing wrong that piss me off. And that was like, okay, fair enough. One thing we need to point out to anyone who is new listening to the show, me and Freddie, well, Freddie is a professional performer, so he sings on stage, okay? But I'm not, well, neither of us are professional broadcasters. We don't do radio shows, you know, originally. This is the first time we've ever got together and spoken to the general public, I suppose, as an audience.
Exactly.
So we talk like we would do down the pub, and that, I think, is what makes the show very relaxing to listen to, and hopefully makes people feel part of also closer to us in a not so creepy way, but it sort of lets them get to know us, because it is like we're down the pub, you know. And I don't watch what I say when I'm down the pub. In fact, I might have to rein it in sometimes a bit, but
exactly. I mean, if people want Ant and Dec, if they want professional broadcasters, they can watch Ant and Dec or someone like that. But we're just people who are just talking about things we're passionate about. And things we enjoy. You know, we're not. I mean, if we could do a very dry podcast where we've got it scripted out and say and in this very monotone, dry sort of way of reading things, like a newsreader. You know, we could become the people. But that's not what it's about. It's about us having a chat about stuff that we're into, that we're passionate about. Yeah. And not just dryly reading things out or even like a news broadcast as such, you know. So we want it to be fun, we want it to be friendly, we want it to be warm, we want it to be feel like that we're all together in the same room, all the listeners, we're all together. It's like a big party, or we're listening in a private conversation, or we sitting at the next table, do you know what I mean, at some Victorian looking pub in the East End of London. There's these two strange blokes talking about is that 10 bells? Yeah, so someone's at the next table and they can hear at the corner, right, these two weird blokes talking about shrunken heads and ghosts and Jack the Ripper and all sorts of weird stuff. So what we've done is we've actually taken what we felt was a comment that left us in a negative light, and we've turned it around into a positive for the listeners. And that is now, we're going to introduce the Mystic Menagerie drinking game. Okay, so what you've got to go away and do is pour yourself a favourite drink, and then probably pause the show now and then come back. And every time Freddie or I say definitely, or you know what I mean, take a sip of your drink, and hopefully 2.5 hours later down the line, you know, well, we'll see. You're either going to be absolutely paralytic, or if me and Freddie have delved into our little thesaurus and alternative phrase pages that we've got in front of us, you might not be very drunk at all, but we'll see how it goes. Exactly. Or they could have liver failure or whatever, you know. Yeah, but don't sue us. For American listeners, if you do get liver failure, right, don't sue us, because that's just not the culture over here. It's like if you make a mistake, you live by it and don't try and blame it on someone else. Exactly, yeah. Although if someone does die, it would be hard for them to sue us unless they did it via a Ouija board or a seance. A spirit came through a writ and it manifested the support in a seance, which is a writ saying, you know, I died because of your drinking game. That would be interesting. That would be. And it'd be a good topic for the next show. Yeah. But on the Urban Dictionary, I thought I'd, you know,
was looking for alternative phrases to try and broaden our vocabulary. But the top definition of "you know what I mean" is actually says it's a phrase used by the inarticulate and dim-witted as a comma and to buy time and cover their lack of knowledge of a subject on which they've decided to speak, and the resulting insecurity this engenders. So I wouldn't say that's the best definition.
No, the thing is, I always thought that like was the sort of stalling time thing for idiots. And when you see people on television, particularly younger people saying, you know, it's kind of like, you know, like I'm going to like go like to this like place, like, you know, that to me is like the idiots, like, you know, stalling. Like there's somebody on TV the other day, some young actress, I think she was in one of these new films that had come out. Yeah. She said it 30 times within 6 minutes. I counted.
Jeez. Okay.
And it's just incessant.
It is.
You know, but I don't think, I mean, by saying people are dim-witted for saying, you know what I mean, that's an insult to the great Frank Bruno. And, you know what I mean, if people... Americans
he's not dim-witted.
No, he's a very intelligent man. If American listeners don't know who Frank Bruno is, he's like the British version of Muhammad Ali. Yes. He's also an intellectual. He's like a philosopher as well.
He is. He's got definitely a few degrees under his belt.
Definitely.
And I think the best description, if you know what I mean, is it's actually described as a communication tactic commonly used amongst close friends to clarify that they are on the same wavelength. And I think that is the best definition.
100%.
If you know what I mean.
Definitely. Someone did a song called You Know What I Mean. Who was it? Is it someone like Oasis or someone like that?
They did do a song called You Know What I Mean.
They did, yeah.
So I'll take it the listener who pointed that out does not listen to that song.
Exactly.
But alternative words to definitely that we might dip into later in the show. We've got absolutely, surely, undeniably, unequivocally, finally. What else have we got? Comprende. That's for you know what I mean. You can say comprende. You dig me. You dig me.
No ifs and buts.
No ifs and buts, yeah.
Expressly, that's a good one.
Yeah, but I think if we're going to be watching too much what we're saying, it's going to take the fluidity and the natural, you know, the way we speak out of the show. So, do you know what? We're just going to say fuck it, and we're going to carry on as we always have done. How about that, Freddie?
Definitely, bollocks him. The thing is, if someone's that upset about a repetition of a word, right? I suggest this man doesn't listen to any music by Two Unlimited, who did a song called No Limits, and the lyrics of that song are no, there's no limits. Yeah. If there's not the word no, then he's going to have a seizure. Listen to that song.
Yes.
It's so, you know, if you don't like repetition of words, be very careful, is what I say. It can make people very angry. Yeah. Raise their blood pressure. Stay cool, everybody.
That's it. Chill out. And as I say, pause it now, go and get yourself a drink, and if we say it, have a drink on us. And yeah, I was going to point out as well, there is another podcast that I listen to, which is an American-based one. Bearing in mind that the actual the fact that we say definitely, you know what I mean, was actually brought up by a British listener. I listened to an American show. It's probably one of my favourite podcasts, and they use the word nuanced totally out of context, probably about 50 times a show between about 4 of them. The word nuanced. I've never used. I can't say I've ever used it personally, but
no.
And yeah, you know, it doesn't drive me crazy. I just think, well, okay, these guys have got the balls to sit in front of a microphone and put their show out in front of thousands of people, and you know, if they want to overuse that word, then that's their prerogative, and it's got, you know, nothing to do with me.
Exactly. I think it's worse when people shoehorn words in that they don't really know what they mean. You know, it's like we're saying stuff because of how we naturally speak, but like people like, you know, say Russell Brand, where he every day goes to his dictionary, finds a random long word and tries to throw it into the conversation out of context, you know, and it's just trying to be clever.
Yeah.
And we could, if people, you know, if this gentleman wants us to do that, we could, you know, if he, you know, pays us to commission a podcast, we could do one with loads of eloquent Russell Brand style flowing poetic words for him. But definitely know what I mean. Yeah. You know, but I'd rather be natural, keep it natural.
Well, if we had the PDF version of the magazine, this would have been your rant section. So, which is pretty cool because we've not had a rant section yet on the podcast. No, so not. That's officially the first rant.
Excellent.
And what we're going to do is we're going to put it to one side and take it on board, but we're going to carry on, you know, as normal.
Regardless.
Yeah, we carry on regardless. One of your favourite films, I would have thought.
Great film.
Yeah. So, what else have we been doing? We've got a bit more of a social media presence now, haven't we, Freddie?
Much bigger than before, yeah. We are now on YouTube,
We are.
And Twitter, as well as Facebook. Obviously, we had a Facebook page, you know, and there's quite a few people that like that, and people interact with us on there, which is great. But we now got a Twitter account, which is @Menagerie Mystic.
Yes.
Capital M, both capital M, so it's Menagerie Mystic. Because someone already had the Mystic Menagerie. Or something similar, so that's why it's Menagerie Mystic.
Wasn't the Magic Menagerie, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, it was. No, it was. I can't remember what it was now. It's someone that had used it since obviously the magazine had come out.
Oh, well,
it's such a popular name that people, you know, want to use that. You know, it's imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery. So
it is.
You know, we're now called the Academic Podcast.
We are.
But yeah, it's basically, you know, it's Menagerie Mystic. But we've got this lovely Twitter page up now, and we, you know, if you listen to the show and you followed us on Twitter, make sure you do follow us. You know, we've got some great people following us. We've got some very interesting people from different sorts of corners of the weird parts of the world.
We've got quite a few celebrities, which is interesting. Ones that we didn't even think would be following the show, but
yeah, we're interested in it. You know,
it's great.
And lots of people in the horror community and horror films and some museums and strange stuff like that. So the sort of stuff that we want. So if you are a listener to the show, join us on Twitter, and we're going to post some interesting things now and then, and some weird news stories that we find. I'm going to post those down there and put them up there. We'll entertain you.
Definitely. I mean, we've got the YouTube account is up and running now, so which is it's kind of I wouldn't say it's over egging the pudding, but it's definitely, we've got a presence on YouTube now. So the whole show, even though there's no visuals, the whole show is there in audio form. It's just as a little splash screen that shows the Mystic Menagerie logo, but you can go on there and listen to the show. And actually, you know, it's only been up a few weeks, and each show has got about 30 listens. So so you know, it's great. It's just another outlet, and we're exploiting any possible avenue we can at the moment, just to get the show out there and get more listeners. And as I say, every time we release a show, you know, the amount of listeners goes up and up and up, and it's never been as popular as this, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And the YouTube, the good thing about that is a lot of people that I know have said to me, "Oh, I can't listen to your podcast. I'm not on iTunes. I don't have, you know, they don't have to work podcast. You know, so go on YouTube. It's on there now." Yeah. So people that don't have access, you know, some people that, you know, maybe have Android phones that are, you know, behind the times, but people that can't, you know, don't listen to podcasts, don't know how to access them on certain devices, they can go on YouTube and just listen to it. Yeah. So it's quite easy for people to access if they don't want to sort of, you know, they don't know how to.
I listen to audiobooks that are on YouTube in the bath, because obviously I don't want to watch any visuals, because I'll be lying there relaxing, surrounded by candles in my bath of virgin's blood. So I just go on YouTube. Find a good audio book, probably an H.P. Lovecraft recital, and press play and listen to it. I don't need to look at the screen. I can just listen to it. It's exactly the same as using iTunes or any other podcast streaming service. Definitely, yeah. I listen to a lot of like 60s and 70s radio comedy as well, if I just want something that's audio. And you can get, it's all on there, and you know, you just listen to it. It's fantastic. So, Mystic Menagerie is very much the same. So, if you're not someone who likes to, you know, uses podcast apps or uses podcasts, listens to them, or knows anything about them, you know, just go on YouTube and you still hear the show. We don't want to exclude anybody from accessing the show. No. And all those waiting for the Patreon page to kick off, as I'm going to talk about in the next section, it's been a busy month. It's also February is a bit of a short month. However, we are on it, but we just want to make sure it's perfectly right before we launch it. So probably at some point next week, we're just going to post probably a 5 to 10 minute podcast show, which is just an interim show, to tell you about the Patreon page as soon as it's launched, and how to back us and how to get more out of the show. And as we say, one of the things you're going to get on there is a workshop. Every show there'll be an extra section with a workshop, which will be aimed at performers, magicians, artists, whatever. But if you back us and pay a certain amount, you'll have access to that, and your life will be better for it. Excellent. And that's and anything extra, we're going to try to make it that bit extra, so that people that are subscribers do feel they're getting more out of the show. You know, so you have the basic show, which is what we're doing now, but there'll be extra bits and pieces and other surprises and things like that along with it. You know, and also copies of the magazine and stuff like this. So it'd be worthwhile if you're a fan of the show and you're into what we talk about. You know, then it's going to be very worthwhile for you to get involved there. So, and we'd appreciate anybody getting involved as well, because we want to keep the show running. We want to keep it viable. You know, and it's important that we keep things going. And if you can help out there, you'll be part of it. You know, brilliant. Right, shall we crack on with the show then, Freddie? Definitely. Excellent. Definitely. Have another drink. Yeah.
No, I mean,
You know what I mean?
If today we're able to create a two-headed dog with 6 legs, is it possible that a similar creature existed thousands of years ago? And I say yes.
me and Dan lead quite bizarre lives. You know, we both live very sort of strange experiences we have. We don't do the normal things people do. So this is where we like to discuss what we've been up to.
We do, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And also let you guys know what we've been up to.
Yeah, and you can hear what in our strange worlds, what sort of things are happening. So you've had quite a lot going on lately, haven't you, Dan?
I have, yeah. It's been a hectic month. Usually January, February are the quiet months. You know, everyone's skint and everyone's recovering from Christmas. But about a week before, I went to Africa last week, but I'll cover that bit in a minute.
Excellent.
But a week before I went to Africa, I launched Oculus, the mark of the Bibliomancer, which we discussed in the previous show.
Yes.
And the reception has been unbelievable. I had over 100 orders straight away for the pre-order. It's not actually released till Monday.
Cool.
But the reception has been amazing, you know, and I thank everyone who's placed an order for Oculus. I'm sure you're going to be, you know, very pleased with it when you come. The mechanics and everything is so ridiculously simple, but that's what makes, I think, a good magic trick. You don't want really stupid, fiddly handling. You want it to be relatively easy to perform and reliable. It was actually quite a complicated design when I first started it, and I just stripped it back, which is, I think it's one thing that I've learned over the years being a prop designer, an illusion designer, is you tend to start off with the most extreme design of an effect, the craziest mechanics, and you try everything. And you actually find that if you strip away all of that and just go down to the bare minimum of what you need to make it work, that actually works, and it actually worked better than everything else.
Definitely. I feel that there's a definite feeling of people trying to sort of put in with things, you know what I mean? Particularly in magic effects. It's the most complicated effect. The simplest, most direct things are the things you can use.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Oculus is something that people, it won't just sit in a drawer, they look at it and say, oh, this is really cool. It'll be something that people will actually use. And there's a world of difference between that, because a lot of things are aimed at performers to show each other down a magic club or whatever, do you know what I mean, to impress each other. And those things may be very clever to other performers because they're more interested in the actual engineering behind it rather than the actual effect itself.
Exactly.
Whereas something like this is straightforward. This is designed for performance. So if you're someone who's a performer and wants something that they can use that's reliable and good, this is the sort of thing to add to your arsenal. Yeah,
definitely. It's there we go, another drink. Should I say absolutely, Freddie. It's obviously the studio just stinks of leather now, though. It smells like a Soho fetish club on a Saturday night because I've got so much leather in there. Obviously, because the bookmarks are made of leather. So over the Christmas period, I taught myself leatherworking with the help of a very helpful lady who goes under the name of Moonskin, who anyone on the Pie Wacket and Peck website has bought anything will see her work on there. But she's done a wonderful job in she's taken me under her wing and shown me how to create really cool leather designs. And
brilliant.
One other really great thing is that I'm also able to produce personalized versions of Oculus. So if there's a certain theme if there's a certain theme you're doing for a show, for example, I could do an RMS Titanic bookmark. So it could be a bookmark that was on the Titanic, and I do all that using my 3D printer. So I'm able to 3D print onto leather, which is crazy. So I can put text, dates, patterns, you name it. And I'm talking with a retailer in Germany about making exclusive Oculus bookmarks for his shop. So they're the only ones, you'd only get them from his shop. And they're going to be logoed or have certain things written on them. So it just opens a whole new world of design possibilities for magic, from my perspective anyway, of creating things in leather, gimp masks, you name it.
Underpants
with
studs on the inside.
Studs on the inside, yeah, that's the only way. So that was good. So I did that a week before I went to Africa because I knew that there was going to be a manic rush. So luckily, just as that died down, I jumped on the plane, went to South Africa for a wedding. And yeah, it was great. Just spent like a week out in the bush, basically. So in a hut, absolutely sweating my knackers off. It was hot out there, very hot. Didn't get any work done at all. I went away with good intentions of doing the Patreon page, getting my new Kickstarter started, and also writing all the documentation for Oculus. But there's no internet out there. It's the worst internet access I've ever had in my life. And if you did get it, you got like 250 megabytes free once a day. And it just kept dropping out. It was just impossible to do anything. So
how do these scammers send all these emails saying I'm the Prince of Nigeria and I need to send you £10 million then?
I don't know. I think they must be using all of the bandwidth to do that.
They've got to be,
because the rest of Africa hasn't got any bandwidth at all. It must be, honestly, it must be a nightmare to run an internet business from South Africa, because from what I've gathered, it's probably about 10 years behind in terms of internet access, I think. It might not be in places like Cape Town and Joburg, but when you're a bit further out, you don't have to go too further out. It's like probably going from the equivalent of like sort of London to Derby. You go that distance and you're literally a tin foil, coat hanger with a bit of tin foil on the end plugged into the top of your phone trying to pick something up.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's one thing I did do. I just thought, well, you know what? I'm out here with the kids. I'm going to enjoy it. And there's some crazy, they've got some crazy folklore going off out there. I don't know if anyone, the listeners, have ever heard of a thing called a tokolosh. Have you ever heard of one, Freddie?
Until you mentioned it to me. I hadn't heard this before. No, it's fascinating, though. Yeah,
tokolosh. It's like, it's probably their equivalent of our fairies, but it's a horrible little thing. It's basically like a gremlin, stroke, probably a bit bigger than a gremlin, or a dwarf, and a zombie and a poltergeist all rolled into one. So you've got three pretty scary things: zombies, poltergeists, and gremlins, all rolled into one. And to top it off, it's got a penis so long it has to chuck it over its shoulder when it walks around.
So it's almost like a super monster, then, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a cross between a horny donkey with a zombie and a poltergeist and a gremlin.
Sounds a bit like Gary Glitter, doesn't it? That's the nearest thing we've got over here.
Probably, yeah. But locked away now. But yeah, this tokolosh, the people who still live out in the townships and that, they put their beds on bricks, and it's essentially to stop the tokolosh climbing into bed, because it's known to rape women and also bite the toes off sleeping people.
Blimey, so it's not a pleasant chap to have around then.
It's not. I knew a chap as well who was an aid worker out there, and what he used to do is when the people were out in the daytime, he used to get his if you make your hand into a fist, if listeners do this now, you do it as well, Fred. If you make your hand into a fist and look at the part of your fist where your little finger is, so you've got like that, the part of your hand and your fist, and if you dip that in chalk or dust and put it down and like roll it on the ground, and then put 5 little dots with your fingers, it looks like a little foot with 5 little toes, like little footprints. So he used to spend most of the day putting chalk and stuff on his hands and making footprints with these 5 little toes into people's huts, and then telling them when they got back that a tokolosh had gone in there earlier in the daytime and they'd not seen it come out, and they used to shit themselves and they wouldn't go in there.
So he's like a real nasty version of Jeremy Beadle then.
Yeah.
Like candid camera,
Yeah.
That is evil though. I mean, there must be some very disturbed children.
Yeah, but it's not just the children, it's the people. The actual people are scared of them as well, the men and the women. It's folklore. I suppose it's like what our folklore was like 300 or 400 years ago, when people still believed in fairies and changelings and all that. It's still out in the sort of, if the further you go out into the sticks, the more the folklore about the tokolosh is there.
Is it quite a big thing over there? So everyone knows about it, is it?
Yeah. It's there's quite a lot. I'm just looking now on the Wikipedia page for it, and there's like tons of influences and references. There's a Diant, my wife will pronounce it because obviously she's South African, she's got the accent, but Diant word, have you heard of those?
No.
Well, they're like a band, and they're in the new film called Chappie, which was done by the director of District 9. They've got a song called Evil Boy, which features a Tokolosh. And there's Tokolosh referenced in books and fairy books. I think if you just go and Google it, you've got to get the spelling right. It's it's spelled a few ways actually. Tikoloshe, Tokolosh. And there's a headline from 1955 where Tokolosh stops a church service. So it's just basically an evil spirit, and it becomes invisible by drinking water.
There has been sightings as well. There's actually a video on YouTube of people supposedly have filmed one.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'll have to have a look at that.
There's Tokolosh sighting, yeah. There's videos, there's clips, there's photographs, there's lots of it.
Yeah. Because I was thinking of getting do you know when you go to the pet shop, you see one of those little balls that's got like a tail on the end that you give to cats, and it's got a battery in it?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to get a cardboard box, put one of those in it, write Danger Tokolosh on the box, and just leave it out. And so the box is like moving around on its own and banging, and see how many people would go up to it. I was, there was... Apart from swimming, there wasn't a lot to do, so I actually thought of these things while I was out there, but I didn't get the opportunity to do it because guess what? I couldn't find a pet shop with one of those balls with a little tail on the end.
Oh no! Next time.
Yeah, next time. So that was my trip to Africa. Very nice. Come back with a bit of a tan. Unusual for obviously such a dark dweller like myself, but needs must. A few other things appeared on the Lebanon Circle website over the last few weeks. So we're now obviously stocking Gemini artifacts, which is great. Anton Lebedev's Hourglass, which is an hourglass, the sand timer.
Yeah. It's
a sand timer that you can make that can stop. You can just make it stop on its own. No remote controls or anything. Really popular. Sells out straight away. He's working round the clock, knocking those out. We've also got a bigger version of that coming out soon. It's twice the size because people have said they'd like to use it for stage, because the one that's available at the moment is only pocket size. But it works really well, and it's great for any illusion where you need to let the audience think that you're stopping time or doing something. It's loads of routine impossibilities with that.
Fantastic.
Trying to think who else we've got. We've got the divination magic, so different types of tarot cards, the Mage's Tarot deck, pendulums made out of creatures' feet, which are very popular. They're quite nice. So all this stuff's on the Lebanon Circle website. So if you head over there, on the front page, there's like the best sellers, and then have a dig around, and there's so much new stuff on there going on there every day. And it's nice that I've started to take all these other different bizarre magic producers under my wing now and give them the Lebanon Circle platform to start selling their things from. Because before I was a little bit I wouldn't say I was selfish, but it was like my baby, and I wanted to keep it to myself, if you know what I mean.
Definitely, yeah.
But now I'm like, well, no, it's it's a small group of people, and I want to embrace the whole thing and let them be part of it. And it's working well. It's a great way, and making really good friendships and good relationships throughout the community.
So it's become like a supermarket of strange then.
Yeah, it is. It's like a Harrods of horror. The other thing as well, Doomsday, nearly sold out now. I think I put something on Facebook yesterday that we had 10 tickets left because we're oversubscribed. We've got people now coming from Canada, America, Sweden, Germany, Italy, France, and then obviously the British people as well. So it's probably going to be the biggest one there has been in terms of the amount of people we got there.
Brilliant.
The lineup's completely done. We can't fit anything else in. It's just absolutely rammed. What I wanted to do is, the previous Doomsdays, there's always been a gala show in the evening, which finishes about 10 o'clock, 10:30, and I just think that's too late for people. So the plan is this year, you go out for something to eat, you come back at 6:30, there's going to be like an additional few lectures and shows for 2 hours. We're going to knock it on the head about 8:30, and then, you know, it's off to the bar then, because that's where the friendships are made and the business is done. You know, when you're all at the bar having a drink and talking to people that you don't have the opportunity to talk to at any other point in the year.
A lot of people only meet up once a year at things like this, don't they?
They do, yeah. I mean, I find it difficult to get around to everyone because, you know, everyone wants to talk to you for at least 10 minutes and you just don't have the time. You know, I lose my voice generally at Doomsday because I'm just talking so much. And yeah, okay, the alcohol's probably got something to do with it, but... So that's pretty much me in terms of what bizarre stuff I've been doing. What about you, Freddie?
I've been pretty busy. I just released my new book, which is called Mystic Menagerie, which is a way of giving readings via music collection.
Of course. I remember that, yeah. It's up on it's on the site.
That's right, yes. It's available from the Lebanon Circle. And it's kind of... Because I feel that, you know, it's quite personal to people. The taste in music, it does define what a person is like, their character, you know. And some people like diverse music, some people like one type of music or different styles. And this is a way of giving readings by using their own music collection. Of course, now you've got iPods and iPhones and MP3 players. Basically, you can go up to somebody, you can press a shuffle function, and the first 5 songs can be treated like tarot cards.
Yes.
So you can use those 5 songs to give them a reading, or if they ask one question, you can bring up one song, and that song has the answer. So it explains in the book how to do it, and also there's contributions from people like Paul Verdini. There's some performers in there who've given their interpretation of certain songs. Okay. So it's like a bit of a glossary in there of like what different styles of music mean about a person, and there's also examples of songs. So I've got like I think there's 10 Beatles songs which are quite popular. So that comes up, and there's also I've got some people to sort of do a shuffle on their own iPods and give themselves readings from their own songs. So it gives you an idea of how to read the songs as well. So I mean it's quite I do it for fun with people. You know, I'll give you a reading. I use your phone. You know, use your music. And people like that because it's fun, you know, and it's to do with music is a very personal thing. The musical taste is something people are often very proud of, or songs can have certain meanings to them. So I feel it resonates with people.
Definitely.
I mean, that's available.
One thing I think we spoke about it before, is when you're in the early stages of a relationship, say when I think everyone asks this question on the first date, it's always, what music do you listen to? Because from that, you can define almost if that person's compatible with you, and also what they're like as a person.
Definitely. I mean, if someone sort of turns around and says, if someone is into the latest chart things, or they can be quite a superficial kind of person, for example. Do you know what I mean? Somebody who is very flippant. You know, if you go with someone's record collection and they're all sort of things that were fashionable for 5 minutes, but they don't like anymore, you know that person's not someone maybe is good for a long-term relationship because they don't really stick with things. They don't have something that... Do you know what I mean? Bucks of trends, or they like because they like it. They tend to be someone who jumps from one thing to another and can be quite a flitty kind of person and very up and down in their moods, for example. Yeah. Whereas you get somebody who likes something that's, despite it being incredibly unfashionable, it's their favourite and they stuck by it. This is someone who's reliable, you know, someone who will stick through something thick and thin, someone that even though there may be some negative traits or times where maybe the band weren't so good, they're the same with people. You know, they see past people's faults and just see the good in them. So it does tell you a lot about a person from the taste in music. So even like the start of a relationship, like you say, finding out what someone likes does tell you a bit about that person and gives you an idea of their character. Yeah, like say if you went out on a date, or for example, if you were given a musicomancy reading and the first 3 things that came up were One Direction, Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran, you'd probably say that they're uneducated, they go with the crowd as a general and don't have any direction themselves. Definitely. You'd also say, what am I doing dating a 14-year-old girl? It does give you an idea of someone. Like someone's into things like Bob Dylan and this, you think, well, they're quite a political person, they're very serious about things. Do you know what I mean? So the different types of music can tell a lot about a person, their personality. But also songs have meaning. So someone is a reading, someone sort of says, you know, I'm applying for a job, you know, what reading can you give me? You can press it on the song, you know, shuffle on the song. The first song that comes up, you read from the lyrics of the song or the feel of the song. It's a very upbeat, happy song. There's positivity about this job. Do you know, that kind of thing? So, or the title of the song as well. It works in the same way as bibliomancy, where if you've got a question and you hit shuffle and the song that pops up, the words in that title could be used as your the reading, essentially, the guidance. As your answer, you know, it's like you've got 3 facets to a song. You've got the title, you've got the lyrics, and also you've got the sound and feel of the song.
Yeah.
You know, and the good thing about this, because these days, you iPods transport music around. You know, if you've got headphones with you, if you don't know the song, you can listen to like a few minutes of it to get the feel of it, and then give them a reading from that. So it's almost like using like a music device as an 8-ball, really, and also it can be done for more longer elaborate readings as well. But the book explains all in there, and also how to sort of elaborate upon certain songs, how to pick up the feel of certain things. But I found it to be very effective, and I found people, not only are the readings fun, people enjoy them because they're personal.
Yeah, and it's very different. It's very different as well. I mean, you could even stitch it on the end of you could do a traditional tarot type reading, and then say, have you got an iPod on you, or have you got any music on your phone, and then tell them to do that, and bingo, away you go, and you've got like a bonus reading that you can give them, which they'll go away thinking, well, that was really different, but it was also really interesting as well.
Definitely, because it's new, and I don't know anybody else that does that. It's going to be quite unique. So learning this to do these sort of readings as well is a very unique thing to add to your tools that you've got. If you give read runes or tarot or whatever, you've got these as well, which is you got something that's very traditional, like a tarot reading, and something that's very modern and high tech, like a musicomancy reading. So it's taking the new and the old, so you can sort of mix both together. But I found it myself to be very effective, and something that I've been doing for a while. So I thought, I'd write it down, and
it's great.
Explain it to people. So that's available from Lebanon's Circle. It's £20 for the PDF.
Okay.
So that's what I've been working on lately, and after it's done, I had an operation on my legs. I can still walk just about. But
you kind of had a growth that you tried to cut out yourself with a hot spoon or something, and it didn't work, so you had to go to the doctors.
A couple of years ago, I had this lump up here on my leg, and of course, when you get to a certain age, which is generally over 40, you start to think, oh, that's the big C, isn't it? So, initially myself, I don't really like going to the doctor. I thought I'd use my own sort of Victorian-style surgery at home, and I removed this lump myself, took it off, and I thought that's all done and dusted, and then a few years later, it came back, but it wouldn't go, so I got the doctor to do it. So it's a big, when they took it out, it's like a big blob of tapioca, like a white squidgy thing. I wanted to keep it, put it in my museum, but I had to send it away for tests and all this sort of stuff, as they do in doctors and all that. But the thing is, the weird thing is, even if it's from my own leg, if I wanted to exhibit that as part of my museum, I'd have to get a license from the Human Tissue Authority.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Because you can exhibit things. I feel from my research, by law, if they've died over 100 years ago, human tissue, you can exhibit it. So if it's like a mummified remains and that kind of thing. But anything within the last 100 years, even from a living person, I believe as well, you have to have a special license, which is quite expensive for it. So I wouldn't even be able to display my own lump as such, But it's obviously gone off somewhere. But it's like a big bit of tapioca. Really weird.
Yeah, the old human remains thing. I don't know if I mentioned it last show or not, but I sent another mummified head, a prop mummified head, over to Canada. And again, customs picked it up, held on to it for 3 weeks, the whole shebang, x-rays, the whole lot. Which I think, personally, it makes me think, well, at least my work looks like the real thing, which is great.
Definitely, yeah.
But I think the problem is when they x-ray it, when I make these human heads, they're actually modelled over a model of a human skull as well. So, you're going to x-ray it, and underneath the flesh, you're going to get the human skull under there. So I think in terms of how realistic it looks on an x-ray, that's why they just pick it up, because it does look like human remains. And I don't know how they decide if it is or not. On this case, they didn't contact me, where previously the Australians did contact me and asked me to explain myself. Whereas with the Canadians, I think they just hung on to it and, had an educated guess that it wasn't real and sent it on its way.
That's insane, yeah. So, they're very heavy on that sort of stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, well, there was a period on, I think it was on eBay, human skulls. Human skulls have always been very expensive to buy, and anyone who works in bizarre magic or is a goth will realise that, if you want a good human skull, you've got to pay upwards of £500 for one that's got, all of its teeth. Jawbone. But all these ones on eBay started springing up, and what they were from mass graves from former Yugoslavia, from the genocide. So people were going out into the countryside where all this like genocide happens, and they were like digging up the bodies and taking the skulls and selling them on eBay, which is disgusting. And obviously, the reason they were able to tell is obviously they're able to date the skulls. That, you know, they're only sort of in the region of sort of 20 years old, thereabouts, and most of them had bullet wounds to the heads as well. So it's pretty disgusting. So that's why if you go on eBay now, there isn't so many human skulls on there.
No, it's the same with with shrunken heads at the time in the Victorian times when people first came back. With shrunken heads, there was a market for them. So the tribes out there started hacking people's heads off for profit rather than in a battle. Do you know what I mean? They did it for profit. Yeah. And that's why a lot of fakes appeared, because there was a big industry for them and they couldn't really keep up the demand. You know, you can only behead so many people in a day. So ISIS only managed a couple of weeks. So it's quite a difficult thing to keep up. So that's what happened there. You know, there was the same thing going on there. More heads were appearing, but people being murdered purely to sell the heads rather than for the traditional reasons. Yeah, it's shocking. I remember watching a documentary on Discovery about the SAS when they were out in, trying to think of what corner of the world it was. They were using headhunters as trackers, basically, to take them over into the enemy territory so they could go on. Basically, they were going to go over and sabotage installations and tanks and stuff because there was a civil war going on. So they used to use the headhunters as trackers, and obviously they became friends with the trackers. But what the headhunters would do is if they killed anyone, they'd traditionally just take their head as a trophy and then take it back. And to be part and accepted as part of the tribe as well, the members of the SAS used to do exactly the same. So there's stories of them making bedside lamps out of human skulls and wearing, necklaces of ears and all sorts of stuff. But I suppose when you're out there, do as the Romans do. Exactly, yeah. Well, that reminds me, talking about the necklaces of ears and stuff like this. And also, you mentioned on eBay, a few years ago, there were people selling Ed Gein's gravestone on eBay. And what was people were going into Plainfield Cemetery, where he's buried, nicking the gravestone and putting it on eBay. And it got stolen a number of times. That's one of the reasons I feel why eBay did clamp down on stuff like that. Yeah. And there are some weird sites. There's a site where you can buy murderer memorabilia. And they've got stuff like this on there. And I don't know what the legality of this, because I suppose the murderer themselves are not directly profiting from the crimes. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That the person selling it is. But there's like letters from Maura Hindley and there's drawings, paintings by John Wayne Gacy and stuff like this. There's a website where you can buy stuff like this. Yeah,
Jeffrey Dahmer's Pots and Pans. And,
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an odd one. I can't sort of get my head around that. I've never been a massive serial killer fan, to be honest. It's just one of the areas. I think it's obviously too close to areas where I've worked before, and as a result, I don't tend to go down that avenue. Apart from obviously Jack the Ripper and stuff, but it's prior to the days of modern forensic technology and stuff. So
yeah, and it's people do have a fascination with it, which is very strange. I mean, there's always been a market for such macabre things. And this is not just talking about people that are into bizarre magic or bizarre. Anyway, this is some general people. There seems to be a fascination with this kind of stuff. Like I say, there's skulls and stuff like that. I mean, if someone put a skull on eBay, it would sell. Yeah. If you're allowed to, you're obviously not allowed to now, but if someone did, that would sell.
There's good routines you can do around things, I suppose. If you had, say, Dennis Nielsen's kitchen knife collection, for example, that is the sort of thing where you would do a routine and you would get some form of you could get an audience member to get some form of psychic connection by holding the knife, and you do the whole almost like the past life regression type routine thing, but asking them if they're getting what feelings they get and who can they see, and that type of thing. There's definitely sort of routine in around using everyday objects like that. So
definitely, you could bring the mummified head into it, couldn't you?
I mean, you could just go down to your local car boot sale and buy some old saucepans, and ones that someone's let them boil dry with rice pudding in or something, and leave them like that, and say that it was Dennis Nielsen's favourite pot that used to boil heads in or something. The audience don't know. Obviously, some might be a bit dubious as to where you got it from, but it's all part of a good story, and it just goes to show that you don't have to have something that's been aged, like an old prop, for example, to create a routine that's going to disturb people.
Exactly, and it's kind of there's that question as well as how far or how recent do people go with routines? You Jack the Ripper, obviously at the time, if you were in London in 1888, that's a horrific thing which people wouldn't really base an entertainment around. You know what I mean? And then you have the Titanic, because obviously they're both areas where it's okay. Do you know what I mean? To sort of plunder, to use as entertainment. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, like if someone affects on World War II, the Holocaust, that is a no-go area. Do you know what I mean? And things
definitely,
like the Moors murderers. I mean, but in 100 years' time, will there be Moors murderers style routines happening? Or will there be a Charles Manson? Do you know what I mean? Card trick or something. Do you just don't know. Will these things suddenly, because the passage of times happen, these things that are horrific now may have the same impact 100 years' time or be lessened like Jack the Ripper is now?
I think though it's mainly to do with how media has changed. We're exposed every day to horrific things via the media. You go on Facebook and you only have to sort of see some of the things that people put on there, whether it's related to ISIS or things that are happening in the Ukraine or animal cruelty. It's all there. Whereas 100 years ago, there wasn't the media outlet. So people, even though they were exposed to, the daily horrors, i.e., health was bad, you didn't live as long, etc. But that was normality. That was part of everyday life. So to them, the threshold of horror was probably a lot less. And if things were happening in different parts of the world, they weren't exposed to it. So Jack the Ripper stands out so much because it was such a huge thing that happened at the time that was disturbing. But they weren't exposed to other things happening in, the Middle East or in Africa or in America. Yeah. So I think nowadays, going into the future, what you just spoke about then, about people creating routines about the Holocaust or the Moors murderers, I just don't think it's going to happen, because there's always going to be something else that outgrosses it. And I'm not going to say that anything's ever going to outgross the Holocaust, because it's not. I think that the Holocaust is a no-go area for absolutely everything other than creating, awareness and remembrance. It's never going to be used in an entertainment facet at all. But things like the Moors murderers and that, there's things that have happened since then that are, i.e., as bad, or if not worse. And I think they'll just get forgotten about by generations.
Yeah, I suppose they could do. I suppose Jack the Ripper's the mystery of not being caught, but then the Titanic is a massive disaster. Do you know what I mean? That's something that's also. But I feel I suppose there's no living people left really involved in those situations. That's the
like you're never going to get a book test about the tsunami, are you? That happened a few years ago. Like a list of, you've got a book of 1,000 people that died in the tsunami, and you're able to. An audience member is able to pick a page and a number, and you get the name of the person who was washed up 3 days later on the beach. It's just not going to happen. No,
it's not that fascination. And particularly Victorian, early 20th century is an era which has got a bit of mystique about it. All these moustaches and bowler hats and sort of steam boats and that kind of stuff. It's got that sort of, I suppose, romanticism in a way. With an underlying edge of darkness.
Yes.
Whereas these days, there was mystery in those days. You had things like the Elephant Man. You could see these things in London. There's no mystery anymore. That's what I sense the problem is. Everything's on the internet. Everything's open. Everything's explained to you. Yeah. And there's a lot of mystery. That's an era where there was still sort of, I suppose, what you call it, magic in the air, really. And unusual things. And parts of the world, like the Orient, they were just opening up to us, and they were full of exotic and strange things that we've never seen before. But nowadays, everything is familiar, and that's I sense the problem is there.
It is. Yeah, we live in a more sterile environment now. The imagination and magic has been sort of sucked out of it pretty much, and it's thanks to people like you and me though that it's still some there for people.
Trying to keep it there, trying to keep it going,
keep it alive. Yeah. So is that your bizarre life for the month?
That's what I've been up to really. Yeah, that's my bizarre life really at the moment, and.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's been quite a strange month, so yeah, it's been a busy one.
Excellent. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll take a short break and we'll come back with a double whammy on the old Paranormal Corner.
These statues look like some type of a being wearing an astronaut suit. And in my opinion, that means that we were visited by some type of extraterrestrials who were very similar in appearance to us.
Welcome back to the Mystic Menagerie podcast. It's now time for Paranormal Corner. We've got a couple of little articles to talk about on this show. And the first one is one that actually popped up in the news earlier this week, which I thought was quite an interesting one. And that is the fact that Britain is actually home to more vampire stories than probably any other place in the world, including Dracula's homeland of Transylvania. So, did you see this story in the Daily Mirror, Freddie?
I did, yeah, I did. It's an exciting one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a strange one. But I think if you think about it, obviously Bram Stoker set the majority of Dracula in the UK. Obviously, the ship, shipwrecks in Whitby. So, you've got Dracula attributed to the UK straight away.
Exactly, yeah.
And there are quite a lot of other vampire-based stories around. I mean, I know the most famous one, and the one where I get my company name from, Lebanon Circle, the Highgate vampire.
Oh, yes. And sadly, the book is out of print at the moment, isn't it?
What, the Highgate vampire one?
Yeah.
By Sean Manchester.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. There was two books, I think, as well. I think David Farrant might have had one as well.
Yeah.
But I remember reading them, and this is a long time ago, both of the books. They were fascinating books. And I read them probably in the late 70s, early 80s, I think.
Yeah.
I don't have them anymore, unfortunately, but when I tried to sort of get hold of them, they're both out of print. But it's a fascinating story.
I had to order my copy direct from Sean Manchester. So I think if any readers want to get hold of a copy, if you Google Sean Manchester, he was selling autographed copies, so I managed to get one of those. It's a great story, but it's got to be taken with a pinch of salt. It's very romantically written. Is a descendant supposedly of Lord Byron, so as you can imagine, it's got lots of lacy frilly cuffs in it, and it's very sort of poetically written. But as to whether how much of it is true, that's left to the reader to decide.
Definitely. I mean, if there is any truth in it, it's certainly embellished. But it's a great read. That's the thing. It is a good read.
Because him and David Farrant were literally like arch rivals, I suppose, when it came to the Highgate vampire story. There's two very different stories told by two people. I think Dave Farrant's perspective on the Highgate vampire was the fact that it was a vampire, but not in the same sense as the Hammer horror vampire that Sean Manchester portrayed in his book. His was more of an energy-sucking ghost, which stalks the cemetery and supposedly still does. Whereas Sean Manchester's vampire was a physical vampire that actually used to sort of rise from the dead and go out at night. And I think, even in his book, he wrote that it turned into a spider the size of a house cat. That's how it used to get into and out of people's houses.
Wow.
So it would shapeshift into like this spider the size of a cat. So you're looking at the size of a dustbin lid, basically. And then it would scamper in through people's windows and then suck their blood. And, really cool story. It'd make a good film.
Definitely.
But have you been around Highgate Cemetery?
I have been, yeah. I've been around there. They did tours. You have to book in advance. You've got to speak to them. There's like a society in there, the Preservation Society of Highgate Cemetery, that kind of thing is called.
That's it.
Like
Friends of Highgate Cemetery, it's called.
That's the one, yeah. You contact them and you book it in advance, and they take you on a tour. And it's an amazing place. I mean, some of the tombstones, the graves there, it's really elaborately designed, aren't they? Some of these mausoleums.
The architecture's amazing. Obviously, with the Victorian obsession with Egypt and Egyptology, there's Egyptian carvings in there, monoliths, and it's just it's really amazing to watch, but look at. But you really wish you could have a wander around on your own. But the reason at night, yeah. What they do is they actually have to have a heightened patrol on Halloween because of people jumping over the wall and going into Highgate Cemetery on Halloween. So they do patrols all night long to keep people away. I don't think people aren't so bothered about it nowadays. It was back in the sort of the 60s, 70s, and 80s when the Highgate vampire legend was at its peak. But nowadays, no one really knows about it apart from people from our generation.
It's kind of, it's almost like forgotten. Like I say, it's not really mentioned like on TV. Like at the time, it was mentioned on the news and everything else, wasn't it? And there's books out about it.
Interviews on Good Morning TV with Sean Manchester.
Exactly, yeah.
The reason you're not actually allowed in there on your own, obviously the main reason is they're trying to preserve it so it doesn't get vandalised and that. But there's another very good, valid reason, and that is to do with the grave plots, which I find quite interesting. So in Victorian times, when you bought a grave plot, so you bought a plot which was, say, 6 foot by 3 foot, what you would do is, to get the most out of that plot, they dig down really deep. So what they would do is they dig down about 30 foot and put like the first person who died right at the bottom, and then the next person who died, they'd put a few planks down, and then they'd put the next coffin on top of that, and so on and so on and so on. So they're piling the coffins on top of each other. But what happens is, a few generations down the line, people don't keep up the payments, and the graveyard goes into disrepair. That there's some graves that are capped off at the top, and they've got like a 20-foot drop in there where they've never put any more bodies.
Really?
Yeah. So you could go like, let's take a shortcut across these few gravestones. You could stand on one, and you could be down like 20 foot in a hole, covered in bones and whatever else has fallen in there over the years. So it's actually very dangerous to walk around it on your own because of that.
It's like a set of a horror film, isn't it, when you go there, It is. It's amazing. I mean, some of the sculptures and the motifs on the graves. And for those who aren't aware of where the name Lebanon Circle comes from, it actually comes from Highgate Cemetery itself, and that is the mausoleum in the centre of the cemetery. There's an actual cedar of Lebanon which grows out of the centre of it, and there's all of the tombs that circle it, and you can go in. It's like a sunken mausoleum that you can walk around, and it's amazing in there, isn't it, Freddie? It's stunning. It really is stunning, And the thing is these days you can still be buried in if you've got the money.
Yes.
You can be buried in Highgate Cemetery.
Yeah.
Because I remember, Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books.
Yes.
And is it Dirk Gently? I think he's buried there.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's some other people who are buried there as well. Quite recent ones. I've lost who it is now. It's not going to come to me. But you can still get buried there. It's if you can find space. I think space is definitely a premium there. Yeah,
definitely space and affording it. I think there's the two things there.
But sorry, I was going to say the actual the vampire itself, the Highgate vampire, was supposedly in one of the tombs in the mausoleum. And
that's right.
If you go to Highgate Cemetery, as soon as you walk in to the Lebanon Circle, it's the tomb directly in front of you. I think it's got 1857 carved into the wall above it. And that is the tomb that supposedly Sean Manchester and his friend abseiled into from the top, opened a coffin and found a chap lying in there, all plump and ripe with blood around his mouth, like although he'd been dead for a few hundred years, he looked like he died yesterday type thing.
The thing is, these days, with mobile phones, you'd expect someone to take a photograph or selfie with it, wouldn't you?
You would, yeah, you'd do it straight away. You'd film it.
You would.
And that kind of, as we were talking about before, is another thing that's killing legends and stories, because everyone's got the ability to do that. And people just don't do it anymore, do they?
No, but it still does sort of seep in. Like we discussed in an earlier episode of the podcast, the Elisa Lam, and that's based around technology, a CCTV camera. So that kind of, it does exist to a degree, but the extent, the tales years ago, someone would tell a story and it get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And became a sort of an urban myth, I suppose.
Yeah.
But if Sean Manchester had filmed this at the time, that would be amazing.
Well, there is the footage supposedly of him. It staked the vampire because it moved from that tomb. Then it was found in the basement of a Victorian mansion in Highgate.
That's right.
He took a stake and some garlic, stabbed it through the heart, and then took a series of photographs, which are almost like time-lapse photographs of the vampire rapidly decomposing. So, and I've discussed it with you before that Dave Farrant actually reveals how that was done, and it's not supposedly how Sean Manchester reckons it's done. But I'm not gonna say anything on the show because obviously I don't know. I don't think we'd have permission from Dave to say that anyway. And it's also a thing that when he does his talks on the Highgate Vampire, which he still does, and I thoroughly recommend anyone who gets the opportunity to go and listen to him goes, he will talk about that there. But it's quite funny, and it actually makes perfect sense the way he puts it over. So I think when it comes to believability on the Highgate Vampire story, Dave Farrant is obviously the most believable of the two and the most plausible. Whereas I think Sean Manchester, as good as his book is, I think he just kind of embellished it more than a little to make it sound like a more traditional vampire story. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's an interesting story to research anyway, so anyone who doesn't know about it, to Google it and have a look, because there's so much about it on the internet. And there was a Hammer film. I don't remember do you remember the Dracula AD 72? It was a Hammer film. It's a very much, these hippie students raised the spirit of Dracula from the graveyard. And that was based on the Highgate Vampire. Oh, was it? Okay. It was inspired by it, yeah. I mean, the story, because it's set around that part of London. They were typical late 60s, early 70s students, like these sort of revolutionary kinds, and they raised this vampire and they bring Dracula back to life in 1972. So yeah, it's good. As 70s vampire films go, it's good, but it's not as good as Blackula. No, Blackula, the funky ghetto vampire, which is my favourite. But no, it's definitely worth checking out. Dracula AD 72. It's not the best Dracula film, but it's definitely worth watching. It's based or inspired by partially the Highgate Vampire. Yeah, for anyone interested in some Blackula memorabilia, I've actually got some stills from the film, original. Whatever movie house produced them. I've got quite a lot of Blackula stills, if anyone's interested. Pure class. It is a good film. It's a brilliant film, yeah. There's also like a Funky Frankenstein one, wasn't there? I don't know if you remember. I don't remember that one. No, I just remember Blackula. Yeah, there was a Frankenstein. They only made one. I mean, with Blackula, there's a sequel, or even a couple of sequels, but there's a one-off Blackenstein, and it's like a Frankenstein, but a funky 70s one as well, which is very good. Part of the old blaxploitation movies that came out around that period. Yeah, definitely. There's some fine films within that genre that are worth investigating, particularly some of the horror ones as well. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, anyone should Google Blackula as well if they haven't got a clue what we're talking about. They probably don't actually believe it exists, but it certainly does. If you've not seen it, you've not lived. That's it. Basically. Now, in terms of like vampires in the UK, then there's, I think it's actually a report that's been compiled by is it Reverend Lionel Fanthorpe, who's of the Fortean TV fame. That's him, yeah. The great Lionel Fanthorpe. He's a great bloke. He's quite regular on paranormal podcasts and stuff. And for saying he is a vicar, he has very I don't know, what you would consider normal unchristian beliefs, or he investigates certain things that you wouldn't expect a vicar to be investigating. However, I think because he's an English vicar and he's not an American one, English vicars can pretty much do whatever they want, can't they? Yeah, it's different over here completely. I mean, I think he's still considered a maverick, but he's not looked down upon or ostracised anyway. No, definitely not. But the thing is with him, he's got quite a charismatic personality as well. Yes. When he's on TV, he's a likeable person. I think he just has a fascination. He's a very open-minded bloke. He's very fascinated by unusual things, and I suppose, being interested in a higher being or Christianity is also being open to, do you know what I mean, to things that we can't see or things that we can't explain. So I suppose he's extended that to other areas as well. Yeah, well, I suppose any religious belief is based on supernatural events. Otherwise, you wouldn't be worshipping whoever it is you're worshipping, because obviously they've done something special. I rise from the dead, walk on water, whatever it is. So I think anyone who's a fanatic religious type person who dismisses the paranormal and the supernatural, they should really just take a step back and look at their own beliefs, and then think, actually, the stuff I believe is pretty far out there as well. Yeah, because it's quite stretching it to believe some of the things in the Bible, to take them as fact. You have to stretch your imagination quite a bit. Oh yeah, definitely. You have to suspend your belief. It's like watching something like Star Wars. You have to sort of
go into that a bit and just sort of put your inhibitions aside a little bit here. And I suppose having that sort of open-mindedness, and it's a thing that can be good or bad. If you're too open-minded, you can believe anything that's thrown at you without question, or you can be, do you know what I mean? Someone who is too skeptical. You've got to find a balance in between. I feel myself.
It is an odd one. You got to think. What I always think is, how is the stuff that people believe in nowadays going to be perceived in 1,000 years' time? The same way that we look at, Egyptian religion or Aztec and Mayan, we look at it and we think, what? I can't believe, that, what a load of rubbish, dog-headed men and, Ra, the sun god and all that. They look at it now and they laugh. And I think in 1,000 years' time, 2,000 years' time, same thing's going to happen. And I was actually discussing it with my wife, really, because obviously I don't belong to any major religion. However, I thought, what if there's like a cataclysmic event on Earth where, say, most traces of Islam, Christianity, Judaism gets wiped out, yet some geek somewhere buried all of his Call of Cthulhu books in a metal box, right? And some archaeological dig out all these Call of Cthulhu supplements and role-play games, and they read these books and they read all this stuff about, elder beings and Cthulhu and all the different gods, Yog-Sothoth and all this. And I think, geez, 1,000 years ago, people used to worship these things, and they wouldn't know any different.
Could be any book that's found in 2,000 years' time. They could see a religious artifact from the time.
Harry Potter. Yeah, Harry Potter. Exactly, Harry Potter.
This noddy in his yellow car, and his disciple big ears. Yeah. It could be anything like that. Because like I say, the Bible, we don't know much about it. Other than it's a book, 50 Shades of Grey, anything could be, discovered in years to come and considered to be an artifact at that time.
Interpreted the wrong way.
Definitely, and I suppose a lot of this is relevant to. It's like I suppose in Red Dwarf, got the cat, and there's this cat religion. Do you know what I mean? Because he descended, and there's that as well. And then Planet of the Apes, you've got people, these remnants of they're trying to cover over sort of the history, and they find these things in these humans, and the apes have their own religion and their own beliefs based on stuff. So it could easily happen. Definitely.
But I think going back to vampires, I would agree that, the UK, if there is vampires, there's going to be quite a lot of them hanging around here. We've got the history, and we've also got plenty enough places for them to hide as well.
And the climate as well.
Yeah, the climate. Yeah, it's like dark and wet most of the time.
I don't think many of them will last in California with the blazing sunlight, Maybe there are loads in California, but they just get burnt apart by the sunlight.
Yeah. There's in terms of vampires, have you ever heard of the story of the Count of Saint-Germain?
I have, yes.
Yeah, he's not a... he may have been English at one point, but it's actually... things to do with the story of the wandering Jew and the guy who, when Jesus was carrying his cross to be crucified, he stopped outside this dude's shop, and the man came out and said, "Oi, you can't stop here, mate. Keep going, get up that hill." And Jesus turned around to him and said, "Oh, cheers, thanks a lot. And by the way, you're going to wait now until I come again, or, the second coming." And this guy started to realise that, his family were dying around him and he never aged, so actually became immortal, and as a curse, essentially. And obviously vampirism is considered a curse, but this guy, if you Google it, this Count of Saint-Germain, it actually appears through history. And I think... what's Napoleon's missus? Is it Josephine?
Josephine.
Yeah. She supposedly met him when she was really young and fell for him. He was quite a handsome chap, obviously well read. He travelled the world, obviously been alive for over 1,000 years. So as you would expect, he's picked up a few tricks. She fell for him, and then he disappeared. And then when she was much older in life, probably in about 50s or 60s, he came back and visited her again, and he hadn't aged a single day. And she actually wrote about it. And the stories of him being taken as prisoner of war in World War II, and all sorts of stories. He actually pops up throughout history all over the place. And as far as we know, he's still knocking about somewhere.
I remember reading about him in the Unexplained magazine way back in the 70s.
Yeah.
They had a big thing about him in there.
So he's essentially a vampire without the need to drink blood. He's just a person who's been cursed with immortality. But for that to be real, obviously Jesus has to be real for a start, so you have to like double whatever you're going to believe in. But just imagine if you'd been alive that long, the amount of wealth you'd have accumulated, the knowledge you'd have accumulated.
It'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you wouldn't need to be around people anymore, would you? It's probably someone who's going to live somewhere really remote, and it's an odd one. It's worth looking into though. But it's related to the vampire thing without him actually being a bloodsucker.
I mean, it's strange when you read about vampires. There was a program on television years ago which disappointed me actually. I think it might have been on one of these Channel 4 they covers, and it was real vampires.
Okay.
And this is in the 80s, I think. And I was very excited. I think I was going to see these real vampires, like modern day Draculas. But basically, what it was like teenagers. I suppose they were goth type teenagers who dressed as vampires, and they had like fangs implanted, and they drank each other's blood at these nightclubs. Yeah. So they weren't actually; they were just people pretending to be vampires. Do you know what I mean? It's like someone dressing up as Darth Vader and saying, "I'm a Sith Lord." It's not real, you know. It's like people with Star Trek outfits, but it was disappointing in that way. But there is a website, and it's called vampirewebsite.net. Okay. And it's a community of people who believe that they are real vampires. And I've got it here. And this is what it says. It says, "This is why I think I'm a real vampire. They have no desire to use us as lab rats or slaves. Before reading any further on this website is not made for poser vamps. Closed-minded people are those who think that they are or claim to be a vampire because they think the spirit of a vampire entered them at some time, making them a vampire. We call these people posers, which they are. They are confused, lost children. This site is not here for them in any way. It's for real vampires. Curious people, open-minded, and skeptics." And it says it's very strange because on the side, and I don't know if this is an advert, it's got like a link to a help site about psychotic depression.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a very weird site. Yeah. And it's got things like real vampires are not pure fiction, and it's got different things it's got things to back out, which are sort of like pseudoscience, I suppose. And there's like videos of how there's a retrovirus apparently they claim to have, which makes them vampires. And there's a video explaining it, sort of like a scientific waffle. And it's saying that even though they're vampires, they're technically still human.
Technically.
So yeah,
they are human, but
yeah, basically. But yeah, it's very strange, and it's got this thing. It's like a condition. It's a virus called a small V, and then capital HERV. Right. And it's apparently it's a common flu virus and the HRV virus. But it makes you a vampire apparently. Okay. But it's a very strange website. Yeah, it's worth having a look through.
But it doesn't make you live, forever type thing, and you can only die if you have your head chopped off or
they haven't specified. The bloke who made the website in 2005, and he's still alive at the moment as far as I know. So we'll see how long he goes on for. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very strange website. It's unusual, but it's worth having a look at. Yeah, it's probably
spawned through the old, the popularity of things like Twilight, which seems
sadly, it's quite serious though. It's got a letter written to them from a real vampire slayer, right? And it's also got like a page on how to find a real vampire, how to know if you are a real vampire, how to tell your friends, how to come out to your friends that you're a vampire, how to get blood. Yeah, there's one of the pages on there. How to get turned into a vampire. How to approach vampires. So it's almost like a minority group who are trying to get people to, do you know what I mean, accept them. Yeah. And there's a list of vampire-friendly bars and clubs as well, which you can go to. So if you do feel that you are a vampire, or if you're sitting here and you're thinking, hang on a minute, I'm 600 years old and I can't get out my daily blood, this website might help.
Yeah, there is a support community for you out there.
It is.
If you've been affected by what you've heard on this show, then please go over to that site.
Well, vampirewebsite.net. And it's got a list of countries where you can go to these vampire clubs. And it's got, like the UK, there's loads of vampire. I mean, you think there'd be a couple, but there's actually loads. Yeah. For instance, it's got Aberdeen, Belfast. If you go to like London, I think there's these allegedly vampire friendly. There's the B movie in Caledonian Road, apparently a vampire friendly. One called Being Boiled, Blood and Velvet, Dead and Buried, Inferno. These are all vampire friendly clubs. Okay. Cryptorium, Slimelight is a goth club. So that's not really. I went
to a goth club probably about in 1996 in London, and it was called Malice in Underworld, and it was in London, and I have no idea where it was. I can't remember now, but when I went there was guys handing swords in to the cloakroom attendant who were dressed as vampires.
Wow.
Which I thought was really odd. And in there they had a black and white projector that was just showing vampire films. And it was a goth club, but it was an underground. It was in like a crypt. And as I say, do you know when was it Kensington Market used to be there?
I know, yeah, I remember that.
I saw it on like there was a little flyer on the wall, and it said tonight, Malice in Underworld, it was called. And I thought, right, I'll go to that. And I went, and as I was handing in my trench coat, there was these guys handing in full on sort of medieval swords and stuff. I thought, geez, walking around London carrying stuff like that, you're going to get arrested. But maybe they weren't. Maybe they flew down from the rooftops.
Yeah, maybe just the bats, and they just transformed. They reached there.
Yeah,
Weirdest vampire story I got. I was in this group of people that were goths years ago, and there was a wide variety of different people. And this chap, he was very serious. He believed he was a vampire. You know, he was very. I don't know if he put stuff in his face to make him look pale, and he said he was a vampire and everything else, and he only came out at night and this, that, and the other. So if you're walking around town in the day, you'd never see this bloke about.
Yeah.
He went to the pub at night. He was there. Some girl we knew was getting married, and he was invited to the wedding. And we went along, and he went inside the church, and everyone's sitting down their pews, you know, for this wedding. And the girl comes down the aisle. Suddenly, he starts screaming.
Okay.
Screaming his head off, and runs outside of this church. I thought, maybe it was a few of us, perhaps he was all right. But he's saying because there was crucifixes there, that's what affected him as a vampire.
All right.
He started feeling a burning. But I said, but hang on, you run outside into the sunlight. You know, so
yeah.
I don't know if he still is or still claims to be a vampire, but at the time he very much believed. I mean, if you spoke to him, he wasn't just mucking around or doing it as a pose. He genuinely believed he was a vampire. And he used to go to. He claimed he used to go to the butchers and buy bags of blood, like animals' blood, and drink that. That's where he got his blood fix from. He didn't need human blood, apparently.
Very strange.
But yes, odd chap, very odd chap he was. Nice bloke, but very strange.
Yeah, I think until an actual real one appears, i.e. one that has been genuinely dead for hundreds of years, pops up and proves it, then yeah, I'm going to remain sceptical on the whole subject, I think.
I'd like to believe it's true.
Well, it's like anything, isn't it? Fairies, vampires, werewolves. It's like, I'd like to believe a lot of things are true. And I suppose that's why we do what we do, because we're trying to keep that possibility alive for the people. Yeah. Great. Well, that was the first section of the Paranormal Corner, and we're going to take a quick break.
Now, magic carpets, do they exist? Of course not. Angels do not exist. They did exist. Do flying serpents actually exist? Of course not. Because magic as such does not exist.
And welcome back to the Mystic Menagerie podcast. Now we have a special guest with us today in the third chair, and it's going to be a bit of a, for our overseas listeners, it's going to be a bit of an accent frenzy, because we've got obviously Freddie's London accent, my Derby accent, and of course we've got Chris Gould of Alchemy Moon with his Brummie accent. So, hi Chris, how are you? Are you all right, Chris?
Good evening.
Here he is. Welcome to the show.
All right, kid.
Well, with Chris.
So I think a lot of people will have, well, apart from the ones who know you personally, will actually never have heard you before speaking, because you're quite an aloof character.
I am.
Yes. So, and as we were saying at the beginning of the show, that a lot of artists are quite aloof, aren't they? We like to, I'll say I can't personally. I have to sort of be in the limelight a bit, but it's sometimes nice to lurk in the shadows.
Oh, certainly so. I mean, I think that it's a practical thing more than anything. It's just, when you're one guy, there's only so many hours in the day, and you don't get out much. No, definitely not. I can agree with you on that for sure. So, I mean, I was talking to Freddie really about how our paths crossed, and it's quite a good topic to start off on, and that is obviously working in sort of the bizarre magic field. Our paths crossed because I essentially released something that was very similar to something that you'd done. And there was a bit of a misunderstanding, so I gave you a call. I asked Ronnie for your phone number so I could give you a call and clear it up straight away. But that is the topic of sort of creative synchronicity, when you've got two people who are working in the same field, who've never even contacted each other before, start having the same ideas. Well, really, I mean, when you got something as small as bizarre magic, it's like it's like a bunch of guys stuck in a lift, and if somebody farts, everybody smells it. Yeah. There's a little degree of that, but I think there's something more profound that happens. I mean, I think anybody that's involved in creativity of any sort, this isn't just magic, but any sort of creativity, it's almost like a collective consciousness, and
the Akashic records type thing.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, sometimes you sort of like. You pick up an idea and you think it's yours, but maybe, you just tuned in your radio set into an idea that was already there, and you're not the only person tuning in. I think a lot of people who create things, particularly writers, I think more than anybody else, get kind of like taken over. I know when I'm writing something, I can be gone an hour and I come back and I think, what is that? I read over it again.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't do it,
That's it. Yeah, I think people have probably asked you this before. I get asked quite a lot, is where do I get my ideas from? And I honestly turn around and say, I don't know. Is it past experience? But it's definitely, it evolves from a more subconscious level, definitely.
I think so. And I think that subconscious level is not isolated to one individual, which is why you get this phenomenon where something comes out, and I mean it happens a lot in science, of course, as well. With scientific inventions, you get everybody suddenly getting the same idea at the same time. What's it called? Morphic resonance. I think Sheldrake talked a lot about this.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fascinating topic. So, but it's a danger, of course, if you're a creator,
especially in the magic field.
And then every man and his dog has come up with the same thing, at the same time.
Yeah, it's
also people stealing ideas as well, of course.
Well, of course, there is a lot of that, but I think when it happens genuinely, it's a strange thing that occurs. But as I say, the magic field is probably one of the areas where you don't want it to happen, because we all have our own little sort of groupies, and as soon as me and you may have discussed something previously about, okay, well, I'm working on this and you're working on that, have we got the thumbs up to go ahead on it? And yes, but if we don't let the community know that, they jump on it straight away, and the whole witch hunt thing begins, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's when I go back in the shadows. I mean, if something doesn't interest me, I just don't engage, I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in magic like to prove their expertise or to prove themselves with things. So if someone brings out an idea, there's people scanning every single idea to find out whether they can relate it to.
Can you hear Freddie? Can you hear Freddie, Chris?
Just about. He's breaking up a bit.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I didn't mean psychologically.
Well, no, not yet.
Give
it time. Give it time. But like I say, I think in Chris, as I say, in magic, you get a lot of people that sort of look at new ideas and they want to prove themselves. They're scanning every single new idea to find if they can see something that relates to a previous idea. So they can say, in 1932, so and so did this. There's a lot of people trying to prove themselves or to try to prove their knowledge is more superior than others. And there seems to be that upmanship thing. You don't get much in other communities as much as that.
No.
Well, it's because it's such a small, little incestuous field. I mean, magic is small enough, but an area such as bizarre magic, which is a term I don't like, by the way, because I think that you use the word bizarre magic and people start thinking you got to put some plastic fangs in and start, acting like Dracula, that guy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I think that it's not a helpful term. That's why I prefer to use mystery entertainer or metaphysical entertainer or something of that kind, because it opens up more possibilities of what we could do.
Yeah,
and that to me is what's interesting about the whole this particular field of magic, because I think that if anything interesting is going to happen in magic, it's going to happen here. It's not going to happen with the card guys. It's not going to happen certainly not with the mentalists, who are the most uptight sort of like.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Imaginative group,
Yeah,
pretentious. I think maybe is the word, pretentious.
Well, I think mentalists as a whole are trying to come across more than magicians. They're actually trying to come across as almost like gifted almost like X-Men type characters. They've got this ability to read minds and do things and make people feel uncomfortable, like they're entering their heads. And I think that's where the kind of superiority complex kicks in.
Well, they have some kind of moral dissonance, I think. I'm losing all my mentalist customers here.
I would say it's not all mentalists, but you do get that kind of feeling from some mentalists, should I say?
Yeah.
Well, I think the curse of a lot of magic, and this comes about. I think Darren Brown, who I admire enormously, I think he's a fantastic performer. Unfortunately, everybody in the mentalist field still wants to be him, it seems. And there's this thing about disclaiming magic, and this is something I can never understand. The idea that magicians should go out to perform to say that magic isn't real. I've never quite got that one,
I feel it comes from the smart-ass thing that they have, because what happens is when people learn a few card tricks, suddenly they're experts in theology without even studying it. They're also scientists. So right. Suddenly, do you know what I mean? This, making a card rise to the top of a deck 30 times suddenly makes them an expert in all religions, makes them an expert on everything scientific, and they sort of post things about science, and they feel superior, the superiority thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have this. It's like they're always trying to prove I'm cleverer than everybody else, or they're in an elite group. So if I see a story like on Facebook or something, and it seems a bit dodgy, something like McDonald's are using human babies in their burgers, I can't be bothered to sit and Google that and find out if it's true or not. So I just share it on Facebook, and then within 10 minutes, some smug magician will go, no, that's not true, and he'll put a link to something disclaiming that story. So I let them do the work for me because they're so keen to prove themselves. I don't have to do it myself.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean about the fact that you perform a few magic tricks to the uninitiated, and it can go straight to your head. I mean, when I worked at a call centre when I was at uni, I had a haunted key and a thumb tip, right? And I could probably start a new religion with that on the call centre floor. I'd make the key roll over in my hand and make some salt disappear, and people were just completely mesmerised by it. And had I let that go to my head, I might have developed into something, a little more. I don't know what the word for it, up my own arse, I suppose is the word.
Well, I think a problem with a lot of magic, a lot of people get into magic because they're dysfunctional kids, and they normally get beaten up in playgrounds and stuff like this. So, doing something weird like that, you suddenly have this status. And I think that's how a lot of people got into magic. Not me, I was about 20 odd when I got into it. I was still getting beaten up in playgrounds, but this sort of thing about the magician's ego is something that really bugs me. When you see most magicians perform, and the more Las Vegas it goes, the worse the phenomenon is. It's all about, them standing up there and saying, look at my ego. And I think that is why magic irritates most people. It's a very unpleasant experience for a lot of people, because basically you've got a guy on a stage who's saying, I've got powers that you don't have, or I can do things you can't do. And you're supposed to sit there and think, great, this is really good entertainment. Yeah. I think, it's moved a lot. And I think that a lot of magicians, or any magician that's been performing for some time, will include their audience, the old it happens in your hands type thing. But not to anything fundamental. I think that magic could do so much more. I mean, I don't want to go on too much about this because it's a huge topic.
Yeah.
But I think that magic could do so much more than it does in terms of shifting people's paradigms, and allowing them to think of other possibilities that there could be. And it seems to be such a waste of an art form to get up on stage and say, I know your freaking, pin number or whatever it might be. So, sorry, Pete. I didn't mean
I think
that was not an attack at you. You're great, man.
I think what you said about bizarre I know you don't like the term bizarre magic, but mystery entertainment being the only genre of magic where things could actually change is the fact that a lot of the routines that you perform as a mystery entertainer are the routines that make an audience member and members of the audience look like the ones who are performing the magic. Whereas,
well, it happens in their imagination. I think that's the important thing. I think that's the big distinction. You're not watching a person on stage where it's happening in their head and you're just supposed to sit there in mute admiration. it's more of an experience for the people that are being performed to, and I think that's significant. There are other significant things too. I think that in mystery entertainment, people are far more open-minded and far more flexible as to what reality itself could be.
Yeah.
And I think this is a big problem. And one of the things we could talk about is, how people believe what they believe and where that comes from. My own point of view is there is no reality. There's no such thing as reality. It's just a consensual agreement as to what we think is actually real. But everything that we experience is an internal psychological event of things that we assume to be external and real. Now that's fine, as long as you don't think that what you believe is real for everybody else, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that bizarre magicians have more of an advanced. Oh no, that sounded pompous. I don't mean advanced, but a more.
Whoa!
It's what a more
midnight.
Yeah, I'm in my creepy castle here. But are more flexible in thinking. So I think that's the reason why I think it will. If you look at, I've been through all magic. I started off in card magic. That's what I was interested in. I still love card magic. Went into mentalism, went into all the sort of different fields, and of all of them, they all seem to be sort of like, well, this is what we do. Here's a routine. You got a little box of stationery and you do stuff with it.
Yeah.
But I think in bizarre magic, there's far more of an inquisitive borderline, that we explore. And I think we've come a long way. Bizarre magic was fangs and vampires and sort of like what I call corny shit. But I think that we are open to explore new ideas and new realms. One of those being actual magic, which is something that particularly interests me. Can you perform real magic?
Yeah, I think that one of the main problems is with our field of magic, i.e., bizarre magic, mystery entertainment, whatever you want to call it, is you do get, obviously like yourself, Chris, you did all the other genres of magic, then moved into this genre and found a home, as it were. But you do, as a retailer and a producer, the amount of people who've try and migrate into our genre and just cannot do it. They just do not get it at all. It just becomes, they can't get their head around the fact that the audience aren't going to turn around and applaud them. They actually in 9 times out of 10, they're going to applaud the member of the audience who's performed, i.e. a feat of like a psychic feat or something. And
absolutely. Yeah. The more you lose your own individual ego, I think the more of a magician you become. But what was I going to say? I think that's an important point. I do get customers that come to me and say, I have no idea how to perform this thing that I bought off you.
Yeah, get it a lot.
Depressingly common.
Yeah.
And I do quite a bit on the forums of I don't mean this in an arrogant way, as if I know and they don't sort of thing. And it may come across that way, but I do quite a bit of tutoring as to what the differences are and how it's not. Most magicians are fixated on the trick.
Yes. And
on the trick going wrong. And that is the thing that is the center of their universe. So, what I say to people is, well, perform it without the trick. The trick is the least important part of it. So it's the part that your audience are least interested in,
Yeah.
It's really about the weaving of the story, of building up the imagination, of getting people to be transported into the world that you created for them. And screw the trick, nobody cares. That's the bit I'm bothered with.
I think Freddie's got a story somewhere along those lines with the Memento Mori locket that I made for him. He didn't even actually perform the trick that it was meant to perform. He just told the story that was around it, and that was enough to,
Absolutely, yeah. At times I've done that with, say, the cuss cards, where, for one, I might think that the audience are psychologically too frail to actually, do the routine. I've often sort of just got them out and talked about them. Look at Christian Chalman, for example. So you could do a whole show just sitting there talking about his stuff, without there being a trick. This is something that's growing in me, the idea that the actual trick kind of gets in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. I mean, to me, when someone like people have these shrunken heads, they're showing people real shrunken heads, and then they do a trick with them. It's devaluing.
Yes,
shrunken
absolutely.
Head. It's amazing enough to see a mummified shrunken head alone, without someone putting a bloody card out of its mouth or guess which one. I've got behind my back and predict which order they're going to put them into this bag. It's just nonsense. It's irrelevant, and I find a lot of it quite childish, to be fair.
Oh, it is. It is. Childish is the word. I think the worst crime is where somebody's actually good at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because and I've seen. I'm not naming any names, but I've seen this happen, many times where somebody has brought somebody into their world, has created something that engages their imagination, and they're there, and they're listening to the story, and then the guy does a trick, and then you you see people. It's kind of like giving them a slap across the face, and they go, "Oh, that's what it is. Oh, I thought, it's a card trick."
Yeah, well, that's it with
the world.
Yeah, I think with bizarre magic, it is. As we said before, it's like 80% presentation and story, and then there's probably a relatively simple magic trick stuck on the end of it. And you've probably come across this problem as well, Chris, and that is normal or mainstream magicians who are trying to sort of branch across into mystery entertainment will buy one of your effects. They'll go away, and it's the type of magicians that only perform for other magicians. They'll come back and say, I performed this last night, and they knew how it worked straight away, and I can't see how I'm going to get away with it. And then you turn around and say, who did you perform it for? And they say, I performed it for a load of friends who are magicians. I say, well, that's because it didn't work. Did you tell them the story? No, I just showed them essentially the 20% at the end. And they were like, well, that's just this trick that's been changed around a bit. And so you're doing it to the wrong people. You need to go and perform it to the public and present it properly, and then it will work. You can't just take an element of it and show it to a bunch of magicians and say it fails on those on those terms.
Well, this is another thing, of course. I mean, most magicians do perform just to other magicians, and that's a fact of life. There aren't that many opportunities. I mean, I found this out when we started the Evening of Mystery. It was kind of like people were interested, other magicians from all over the country were interested in taking part in this, purely because there's really not that many opportunities for magicians to perform in front of the public unless you create those opportunities yourself.
Yeah.
Most magicians, most of my customers, and I don't mean this as a derogative thing, there's this thing in magic where magic can be many things. I don't think it is just about performance. It can be. I'm quite happy, for example, if somebody buys one of my things and they never show anybody else.
Yeah.
It can be an individual piece of intellectual or imaginative entertainment for themselves. I mean, I'm always aware of that when I do my stuff. They always come with big books that you can read,
Yes.
and stuff like that. But I mean, most magicians do perform for other magicians. Even really quite big names.
Yeah. The problem is when they lie about it. It's when it's against the ego thing. They say, I'm a massive entertainer, corporate entertainer. I perform gigs. I'm releasing this trick, and I perform it every night to paying audiences. You Google them, you find no indication of a gig anywhere.
No,
all you see is Magic Forum posts.
Some big names in that one,
Yeah.
You probably know who I'm alluding to, but
yes.
Somebody not in this country, incidentally, but
I think I know who you mean. Someone who brings out a lot of things.
There are no evidence of these people. I mean, this is why I left. I had a big meltdown on the Magic Cafe that got me thrown off, and I won't go into the details of it because I'll be thrown off again. And then I started my own forum, which is how Alchemy Moon started, and I got thrown off that as well.
Got thrown off your own forum. That's class.
But anyway, I'm probably rightly so. But I mean, I got so annoyed by about this was the mentalist thing, It was just sort of like bunches of baying dogs who obviously never performed and really didn't know anything, all just sort of like snapping at each other's heels. And I thought, this is This is like, I might as well go to a dog pit than sit here listening to this lot,
Yeah, it can be quite a poisonous environment.
My connections with the Magic Cafe as well. Oh God.
Yeah, it is a poisonous environment. If you if you put one foot wrong, a witch hunt will ensue straight away. And as we all know, both of us I think have been part of a few of them, and it's just infuriating. Which is why
it actually wouldn't infuriate me now. It did then because I was a young boy, But I wouldn't care less now, because you kind of like get to know how things operate, don't you? I mean, that's what the entertainment there is.
Yeah.
And that's why people go there, to have that.
It is. It's like the gladiators fighting it out while people have a watch. It's the same thing, but for
it's like a load of people pretending to be gladiators.
Oh yeah, true.
It's keyboard gladiators, I suppose you can call them.
I had a very good conversation with Prof BC about this actually when he came over to the UK last June. We went out for a meal, and I said to Prof BC, I said, out of all of the things I sell, I would say that about 15% go to actual performing people who go out regularly and perform it. The rest of it will go out and it will go into a display cabinet or a box, and with all intention of it being performed with, but that will be it. It will never get performed. The DVD will probably never get looked at, and the manual will never get read. And I said it's almost like soul destroying that you're creating something, obviously a physical object that you put a lot of time and effort into doing, and then you spill your guts out either on a DVD or on a PDF document with every possible, angle covered for performance and this, that, or the other. So you give them the full package, and then only sort of 15% of your audience will ever use that, and the rest of it are just buying the prop because it looks nice and spooky and will go in their collection. And
well, you know what? That doesn't bother me in the slightest.
Yeah.
It doesn't concern me at all. I think that, once somebody's bought something off me, what they do with that is entirely up to them. I mean, I don't have any of the snobbery that a lot of magicians have about performance, especially when, as Freddie said, a lot of them are not exactly telling the truth anyway.
Yeah, true.
If people perform with it, great. I'd love to see some of my stuff perform. I know it is performed. I know who buy, and I'd love to see some of it perform. But if people want to, just look at it, good, that's fine. I bought plenty of stuff that I just look at, and I think if people want to engage with it on a intellectual or on an imaginative level, that's great, And if it's just for their own entertainment, I'm perfectly okay with that,
I just feel it's a bit like using the analogy of the old 80s sort of vinyl single. You have the main single that's in the charts, and then you find out that the band have put a really obscure B-side that only sort of a few people will ever listen to and enjoy. And that's what I think the documentation that goes with some of the things we produce is comparable to. It's the B-side that only the real diehards and the people who really like it are going to use it. The rest of it, listen to the A-side, and it'll go, as I say, into a cabinet. And in the same sense, yes, I can see that. I
don't know. I mean, does that happen? I mean, I think that. The first thing I put out was with Outlaw, which was Sanctum, and I don't think anybody really kind of like understood that when it first went out. But I think it planted a lot of seeds, into people's thinking that materialized probably, like years later. And the stuff I do now, I don't really expect anybody to read it. I mean, I barely understand it myself sometimes. It's often way too long and way too detailed, and I kind of like think it's like throwing out potentials to people, and then different people will do different things with those potentials,
The stories of your stuff, Chris, the background that you've written for stuff is very engaging. It's very atmospheric.
Well, I get lost in it, you know.
Yeah, I found myself as well. I found it's very, you know, it's like they're not just buying this thing and that's it. It's got the whole mythology around it, a story. It's well thought out. It's got a backstory to it, you know. And that's why it surprises me that people don't use these things, you know. It's like the stuff Dan makes is amazing. You know, you think people have got this, they'd be proud to
well, it depends what the definition of using something is. You know, I mean, if I'll give you an analogy here, and it relates to the work that I did. Like a lot of people in Bizarre Magic, probably at some point in your life, you played a game called Call of Cthulhu. Yeah,
yeah. Still do.
The role-playing game. Well, we used to play this. I was fascinated by it. I was really fascinated by the concept of the thing, and we used to have big Call of Cthulhu parties that basically went on for days, literally for days. You know, we would have people there and they'd sleep over, and we entered that world, you know, and it became our reality. But what fascinated me about it, then one by one, and there'll be people, you know, sagely nodding their heads with what I'm going to say now. One by one, all my friends got married, had kids, you know, real life got them. They got mortgages, and then they became trapped in the system, and they now are spending the rest of their lives paying off their mortgages and are not really having fun anymore. And so I'm left there with this pile of Call of Cthulhu type scenarios, and I'm reading through them. And what fascinates me about it is the format of them for a novel. You know, that you could have a novel where instead of, like, you know, you start at page 1 and you end at page whatever, you are given the information to create the novel in your own head.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fascinating concept, and one that may have been done in literature. I've not come across it, but one that certainly could be done more with. And it's kind of like it's like that for the stories that I create for my stuff as well. I'm quite happy if I've painted a picture inside somebody's head and they never do anything with that other than having enjoyed that experience, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
If they don't do it somebody else, great. That's their choice, you know?
Yeah. I can see the similarities there. I mean, I read a lot of I don't play Call of Cthulhu purely because I'm the chap with the mortgage and the kids, and I've got no one around me who plays it anymore. But I still read all of the the campaign material, the source material, and you read it and you think, this is, if I was going to be the keeper and have some people playing this, you could play it multiple times and it would be a different story every single time, and you are part of that experience for the time you're playing it.
Well, you see the analogy. I mean, the thing is, you're doing that and you're happy doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. I can get out a Call of Cthulhu scenario and go through it, and it's the analogy between performance and non-performance. I mean, if you've got a bunch of people around, that'd be great,
Yeah.
And do it, but it doesn't stop your enjoyment of the thing.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I'm reading it and still getting the enjoyment from it, and
because those pictures are being painted in your head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're having that thing happen.
To a degree, though, it's a bit like buying the most expensive sports car, like a Ferrari, and keeping it in a garage and never taking it out to drive and just going in there now and then and looking at it. In a way, yes, you're getting what you want from it, but at the end of the day, you could be riding this around. To me, it's a waste. There's a bloke who, I won't mention his name, I'll be very careful how I phrase this. There's because Dan's things are so good, they're almost like status symbols in certain parts of the community because they're very well made. Very well made items, and there's a chap who sort of like claimed he was doing regular seances, and basically he had pictures of himself with different props, and they were nice props, great things and that, and claiming that he was performing regularly, claiming, I'm doing a seance tonight, I'm flying to New York, I'm doing this, but there was never any link to where he was performing. There's never any photographs, and the one photograph he did put on there was nicked from somebody else's Instagram, or was it Flickr? It turned out this bloke had his own business. It was just like a very mundane thing.
Who's that guy who posts up loads of photographs of himself with famous people in Madame Tussauds? I like that one.
That's a different one. It's another liar. But no, this chap.
That was great, though.
I know, that's mad. But I mean, he could have said, "Look, I've read Gandhi's mind. I've Henry VIII. I showed him a card trick. He could have done that. That would have been funnier."
Yes.
He could be, showing Hitler a sponge ball routine. Look, I've only got one ball. Look, he could do something more amusing than pictures with Sarah Michelle Gellar. There's this history there. He could perform for anybody.
Yeah, it was a bit sleazy, but I mean, I think some things are so bad they transcend being bad and become good again, you know.
Definitely, yeah. It's that kind of side of it that, you know, I feel that there's some amazing things in the work that people put into stuff. If it's not used, it kind of cheapens the work that the person's put into.
Yeah, but Freddie, it depends what you mean by, it depends how you define the word used, you know. I mean, I have quite a flexible definition of that, and it doesn't always mean performance. I mean, I realise, like Dan said, you know, about 70 to 80% of your customers will never actually go and perform the stuff that you make. And this has never been really an issue for me. You know, they're buying it, so they must be finding value in it. You know, there's something.
Yeah, but I think it's for the sake of having it. It's like if I went to the shop and I bought, say, for instance, a Chaz and Dave CD, and I never listened to that CD, but I had it there, and I kept looking at the cover all the time. I put in my other CDs to say, look, I've got this. You know, it's just to say, look at what I've collected. If I put that CD on, I'd have time of my life.
Well, you know, that in itself is a valid reason for some people. I mean, you know, I've got lots of people who've got man caves and all this kind of stuff, and they buy this stuff and they put it in. They invite people around. They show them stuff they probably know. They don't know what to. They've never performed it or anything like that. But that is their use of it. You know.
I mean, what you've said, Chris, has made me look at things in a different light, and which is good because, you know, as I say, I was looking at the fact that I do all this additional work and stuff that never gets looked at. Yet I'm an avid collector of board games. Right? I sit here now in my man cave, as you've just mentioned. I'm surrounded by games that have still got shrink wrap on that I bought 2 years ago. And I may have read the manual, but I've read the PDF manual. So I've not even opened the box and looked at what's inside. So I essentially am the same as some of my customers in the fact that I've bought all this stuff that someone's put so much hard work and artwork into. Yeah, it's sitting in my room next to me now. It's never been played with. However,
well, you know, who are we as artists to dictate what people's values in that artwork are? I mean, this goes with any art. You know, you create the thing, then you put it out, and what people then do with that and what they make of it is entirely up to them, you know.
But it can be damaging, Chris. If somebody, say for instance, somebody is a performer, and they've bought yours and Dan's items, and that's what they use in their show regularly, you know. But then you've got someone like this man I told about, the man who lied, who claimed he was doing seances. He actually mentioned by name, I'm going to use Lebanon circles, blah, 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 tonight in my show. So basically he's revealing what it is and where it came from. So he's only buying it to collect it, to show off it as a status symbol. But if other people see that, it's ruined for other performers. Do you know what I mean? If they're telling people what it is. There's a similar thing on the Magic Cafe where a certain item was discussed very openly, and they were using sort of words which people would Google, you know. So basically that item was ruined for people that actually did perform it in their shows.
Yeah, there's no way of policing that, though.
Do you know what I mean, Chris? Yeah. It's if you're using it in your show, right, you know, you bought it to use in your show, that's your job, you know, and some idiot who collects things is blabbing about it the internet. It doesn't matter if people know about it or not, because to him it's not his livelihood. You know, so what he's doing, he's destroying someone's livelihood to say, hey, look what I've got, look what cost me £100. That's what annoys me about it.
No, I never quite get this one. But I do acknowledge that it's a problem, because I've had customers that have contacted me saying that it's a problem for them. But I mean, if, for example, you know, people collect, I'll talk about the cuss cards because I've got a big pile of them on the table in front of me here that I'll start putting into packages and stuff. But if a collector's got a cuss cards, I mean, if I was going out to perform with them, I certainly would call them something else, you know. And I'd make sure that I'd protected my own performance by the way that I performed it.
Yeah, but this thing was something.
How it's been a problem for people.
This thing was something specific based around a certain historical event. So if someone Googled that event, it wasn't that well known, as obscure. They would find this Magic Cafe for it straight away, which means anyone performing it ruined it, because part of the actual, you know, routine, so to speak, was you can look this up when you get home because there's all the facts about the actual real life situation. But amongst the Google searches,
it's certainly something that I need to think about.
It destroys it for others, you know. That's what I think.
Yeah,
because there's the show off thing, you know. In magic, like you say, the ego. It's just, well, if they're not buying something to say this is great, I really like it, I want to use it. It's to say, look what I've got and you haven't. It's like, I'm going to post a picture of this on a magic forum to show people what I bought this month, you know, that I've got and they haven't. I've spent amount of money on this, and they're not buying it to use it.
Well, in a way, you know, you have to include all of these people. You see, the thing is, I've never found this a problem in my own performance, so I assume it's not a problem for anybody else. But I mean, I know it is because I've had people contact me about it. And it's something that I do need to, I have been thinking about, thinking about how do you actually tackle this. But performers are probably around about 20% of the people who buy my stuff. So, I have to consider the ones that aren't performers too. There's a lot of people that buy for a lot of different reasons. And all of those reasons are valid for that person. There isn't a hierarchy there.
Because they say that people who get into magic tend to be into it for about average 2 years. That's what a lot of people, they say the majority of young kids get into it, when they're 15, then they sort of grow out of it a little bit. So these magic shops are there, a lot of them, to cater for these people that have a mass spend for 2 years. And then, do you know what I mean?
I see a high turnover of customers. I think Chris probably does as well. There's obviously, you've got the core of the community, which is, they're the same people who buy both of mine and Chris's work. But there's you always notice the new people that you've never seen before, and they'll come in and they'll buy, a few of the lower range things, and then 6 months later they'll probably spend a little bit more and buy something, and then bang, they disappear. They're gone. They're never gone again. And then about a year later,
many of those,
yeah, and then a year later you get the email off the guy who's bought all of this kit off the other person saying, "Have you got the manual? Because I've got all of this," and he's lost the manual to it. So you see the dabbler who buys it, hoards it, has a go on it, and then passes it on to the next person who's the next dabbler. But it's like anything. I suppose you get it in music. People like a certain genre of music for a certain period of time, and they move on. There's only, like I'm an old school goth. I've always listened to goth, and I always will do. But I know plenty of people who listened to it for about 6 months and went on to listen to, Kylie Minogue or something. So it swings and roundabouts. I think it's something that happens in any genre of the entertainment industry.
Well, I don't actually get that many of that sort of customer. I think it's purely because Alchemy Moon is so obscure. I don't go out of my way to publicise things, mainly out of laziness, it must be said, than anything else. But I tend to get a core. It's all word of mouth, People have to sort of find Alchemy Moon. It's not out there and obvious, So you don't tend to get the dabblers, they don't come across me.
No. Yeah. They tend to come through me first, I think. I'm on the dabbler front line. and then they then they the more sort of serious ones then filter through to people like you, Chris, as you say, who's a bit more obscure and a little bit sort of more hidden, which I think that's part of the attraction with your stuff as well. Definitely.
I think I kind of scare the others off of it, to be honest.
No, I think it's with the Alchemy Moon site and the way you market stuff, it's on a more, in terms of, I don't know, it's more of a real magic type of thing. It's the people who go through my stuff and then realise that bizarre magic isn't for them, never get as far to look at your stuff. Yours is for the place where the true sort of fans of the genre.
It's the last room on the end of the corridor in the mental hospital type thing.
Yeah. I'm like the reception. I'm the receptionist who says, "Yeah, go through," and then they get picked off as they go up, and then when they get to the last room, the mysterious room on the end, that's where they find you. And I think that's cool. It's nice that there's. We cater for all these different areas in such a small area, if you know what I mean.
Well, I kind of like that because, the thing is, I do other things in my life. I don't just do magic, so I don't have, and it's, and it's not just me and Alchemy Moon. There's a team of people doing stuff, but in terms of my own stuff, it's me, and there's only so many hours in the day. So in a way, if I had 100 customers or 1,000 customers, I just wouldn't be able to do it anyway,
Yeah.
So having it obscure and having people find me is kind of a little bit special for me, because the people I don't really have customers. I have friends, and I have friends who buy stuff.
Yeah.
And that to me is a lot more you get that sort of like personal relationship. And this is another thing of it, I'm always very into the idea of the community, and talking to other people. And, if somebody sends me an email, I answer and I talk to them, and, a friendship develops, and you end up sort of like, spending 8 hours of your day answering emails and stuff like that, which I enjoy,
Yeah.
But if there was too many customers, all of that stuff would have to go out of the window,
Yeah, well, I have to get up at 5 in the morning to deal with my emails, because
that's when I go to bed.
Yeah, it got to the point where, I'd get up at the normal time, start work at 9, and I'd still be doing emails at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I wasn't getting any studio time done. So, I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum where, I get a hell of a lot of people emailing me about stuff, and I have to treat them all individually and answer them back. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a business. But it is.
Well, you see, this is
you've protected yourself in that way, which is quite good.
Yeah, this is the idea of the forum, though. We've got a forum, and one of the ideas behind that is that. I'm quite sort of like desperately keen that Alchemy Moon isn't me. And, and I think that's a lot of people's perceptions, that it's my thing, when that's not my perception.
No.
My perception is it's anybody that comes in and joins in and wants to do something or talk about something or anything like that, because Alchemy Moon started as a forum.
Yeah.
And it started as a reaction to my psychotic breakdown on other forums, and as an alternative where people could talk without talking in the way that we discussed earlier. And it's always been that, actually. Alchemy Moon has been precious, I think, as a forum for people to talk on a deeper level and with mutual respect.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's kind of like, I hope to cut down on emails with that, because people should be talking to each other, and there be a community rather than, something a little bit more too focused,
Yeah. It's I say it's such a small corner of magic. It has got its issues and sort of incestuous, poisonous aspects to it. Maybe it's because it is so small that it has that.
I think the thing that has kept me in bizarre magic is I don't find so much of that. I don't actually get that much of it. I mean, even with I think, for example, there's a big divide between the US and the UK in terms of magic dealers, for example. But there's still, I think, and you may disagree with me on this one, but I think there's still a degree of respect, and I still think that we behave more like gentlemen in the spooky forum than on any other forum.
Yeah.
Cafe, And I think that there's more of a I don't know. It seems to me it's a little bit more grown up,
Yeah, it's I think that is, though, because it is a completely different part of the magic world. It's hard to describe, really.
A lot of people come into it, do you know what I mean, thinking that it's easy or whatever, and then it's like going into a really dodgy pub, you know what I mean, and they're straight out the door within 5 minutes, And the funny thing about this is general magicians, they think they can do everything. You see people on there, 1 minute I'm a card magician, then they're a mentalist, then they're an illusionist, then they're an escapologist, and then they're a hypnotist, and then they're a bizarrist, and a lot of them dabble in everything. It's like someone being in an orchestra picking up I'm a trombone player today. You never played it before, it doesn't matter, I'm brilliant. It's their kind of attitude. So I think some people dabble and come into sort of bizarre, but only the hardcore, the people that are generally into that sort of stuff, stay there. Because to do those sort of those sort of shows, you've got to be into the sort of dark material or have a knowledge in it, be interested in the occult, or do you know what I mean, Jack the Ripper or something like that. You've got to have a proper interest in it. You can't feign it and pretend you're into it just for 5 minutes, because it doesn't last for very long. So you do get these dabblers that come in.
Yeah.
There's one chap who came in and he joined a bizarre group, and he was sort of saying that he was a bizarrist and everything else. And basically what he was a normal card magician who decided to buy a steampunk hat with goggles on. And a big dark coat, and that made him a bizarre magician. He's still doing the same card trick, he's still doing ambitious card routine and stuff with aces and all that. But because he had a steampunk hat, that made him a bizarre magician.
Yeah.
That's sort of people
so what? I don't really care. It's kind of like whatever people want to do is up to them.
It is, but they barge in as if they're experts and start telling you what people. The thing is,
I just stop listening and walk away at that point.
Yeah, it's irritating. It does. I mean, in a thing like that, if there's people with mutual interests talking, like we're talking now, people that are into the same things, that's fine. But when someone comes in who knows nothing about, it's like if you say you go into a pub where people talk about football and you know nothing about it, and you pretend you're into football and you say a few things you've heard, you try to impress them. They'll soon suss you out and realise you're talking rubbish and won't want to speak with you. And that's the kind of thing that you get, these people batting in all the time who aren't really interested in what you're talking about, but pretending because they believe it's fashionable. So there's a lot of that element to it as well, But I think...
Yeah, but these guys are only travelling through,
Yeah, I think, mystery entertainment, bizarre magic, it's one of the areas where it's actually more of a lifestyle. So you've always been involved in that area of entertainment, be it, as you say, playing role-play games, being a fan of horror films, reading this types of... You've always had, probably both feet in this slightly more esoteric world.
Well, yeah, I mean, with me, it was not so much. I played Call of Cthulhu and watched Hammer films like everybody else, but that wasn't really my influence. My background comes from actual real magic, and I used to perform real magic. That's what I did, when I was a lot younger.
Like ritual type magic, sort of.
Well, yeah, I got into all the, it's great, all the cloaks and swords.
It is fantastic.
And stuff like this, but. I spent an enormous amount of time on this, and I had this sort of like road to Damascus moment where I woke up and I thought, what if this is all bullshit? What if, I'm kind of enjoying all of this, but I've got no palpable evidence that I've done anything or that magic is indeed real. Yeah. And it's kind of like a big bubble burst, and I think I went off and I bought myself a Spectrum. Right. And got into computer programming and went in the entire opposite direction, And then I got into magic later, so I was quite late into magic, as kind of like a way of performing magic in a false way, which is the way I saw it.
Yeah, one where you could see results almost.
Yeah, because with magic you can't perform magic because the outcomes are not predictable or cannot be timed in any predictable way. But when I got into magic, oddly enough, it's through performance magic that I began to understand real magic more, and how that actually works. And I think I can say now that I can get results. And the actual basics of real magic are actually stupidly simple, And the mechanisms by the way that it works are stupidly simple. So that's kind of like my road to where I am now. So now I'm looking at the idea of, can we take performance magic and can we move that into a world of real phenomena? Freddie, for example, you do seances, you're talking about real phenomena there. People do hypnotism, guided visualizations, they're doing real magic in the sense of it's not about a trick, It's become almost impossible for me to do a trick. It seems to be like a daft thing to do,
Yeah.
I mean, I still sell tricks, but and I'd love to be able to do it, but it's becoming difficult for me.
Yeah, I think it's. I know what you mean about the whole performing tricks as such. Just doing. I mean, for me, I'm not a performer anyway. Although I perform for close friends and family and get away with it, but I can't just do the sort of the trick at the end. I have to do the whole thing, the story and everything with it. Because if it was just like, hey, watch this, watch me do this, and bang, something's disappeared. That for me it feels unrewarding and quite corny, and I think that the people who are also watching me do that feel the same as well. I hate going to a corporate event and a magician comes around and says, all right, who wants to see a magic trick? 9 times out of 10, most people who I'm with turn around and think, actually, none of us want to see it at all, to be honest. We're having a nice time talking, and I don't want to see a couple of sponge balls disappear or something. It's, leaves you feeling...
Well, most people are actually irritated by magic for reasons that we talked about earlier, that it's not actually about them. This is what makes what we do very much different. You know, I mean, for example, you walk. Let's take this scenario, and I've said this many times, but if you walk into a pub, for example, and there's a guy doing magic tricks, if you walk in there with a deck of tarot cards, everybody's going to leave that guy and come over and sit by you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're doing things that are not about your ego. You're doing things that are about the things that interest your audience, which is them.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. You spot on.
I think there's a huge difference. You know, so if I perform something and I know there's a trick coming up, I actually get scared, not in the traditional way that magician's guilt and all this kind of stuff, but it's kind of like I've built up this thing and now I'm coming to the point where I've got to do this freaking trick, you know, and there's a chance that it's gonna spoil the whole thing, you know.
The thing is, I mean, whether magicians like it or not, the general public perceives magic as something for children.
Yes.
And that is a fact. I mean, people, they've got their own industry where they have all these cool magicians and these, like, you know, they're watching all this. But outside of that, the general public haven't got the interest in magic that magicians have, so they see it as a kids' entertainment, you know. It's like every time, you know, I don't really perform magic anymore. When if I ever showed, my kids have got a party, can you do my kids' party? Or, no, Brian, come and look at this man, he can do, you know, they see it as something for children, you know. And it's like, once I was booked to perform at a restaurant, and I was doing like mind reading basically, and tarot readings. And it was a Valentine's meal, so I said, look, I only do stuff for adults, you know. I'm not a kids entertainer, you know. Unlike many magicians, I don't have a desire to be near small children. But they booked me, and I said, look, you know, there's going to be couples there because it's Valentine's night. And I said, that's fine, you know. Then he rang me in the morning and said, when I told them there's going to be someone there who can do a bit of magic and all that, they all bringing their kids along. Can you do something for kids?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I just sort of
magic writes its own map, doesn't it? I mean, if you look at what magic was like until, I mean, you know, I'm a huge admirer of people like David Blaine and Darren Brown. Before David Blaine started standing on sticks and stuff like that, you know, they actually did quite a bit to revolutionise the public perception of what magic actually was.
Yeah. And
before that, you know, you got David Nixon and. What's his name? You know, all the usual stuff.
Yeah.
Sort of like Saturday night light entertainment, you know. And it was like Blackpool end of the pier stuff rather than anything else. So of course, you know, that's people's perceptions of it. But magicians are their own worst enemy. You know, they go out and they perform magic badly. And by that I mean they perform magic that is about their ego. Again, I'm coming back to the same point.
And the thing is,
you know, this is why you get it.
Like say with these this 50s style of magic, the sort of the David Nixon style, a lot of magicians, supposed contemporary ones, still have that style today. I mean, I run cabaret nights and I've booked loads of magicians over the years, and some of them still have that sort of patronising tone of voice. Madam, please hold the card aloft so the audience can see. It's very commanding, very patronising school teacher type tone, and people they don't feel entertained or warmed by that. They feel intimidated. Is what I find. Do you know what I mean? This commanding sort of, you stand there, do this, and they're sort of making jokes at people's expense. And I think the audience may laugh at it, but there's a bit of uncomfortable laughter I found with those sort of things that people don't really enjoy. I think
audience feel isolated from it. I think, you know, is the main thing. It's not part of them, you know, it's not anything to do with them. They're watching something, which is, you know, I mean, it's okay to an extent, I mean, because if you look at it, all entertainment is basically somebody standing up on the stage doing something that the people sitting not on the stage can't do. You know?
Yeah. And, so you can relate to it, that's the thing.
That's the basics of it. But I just think that and you know, again, magic can do that. You know, you can get up on stage and you can juggle. You know, you can get up on stage and you can pull a rabbit out of a hat or whatever. But I think magic's got the potential of doing a lot more. I'm not sort of like putting that down. I'm not putting anything down. You know, people do what they want, but I think that there's a potential in magic to take it into something that's a little bit more interesting and does something. You know,
definitely. I mean, people can't complain.
For me, the main thing that magic can do is this idea. You know, when you perform magic, the best reaction you can get, and you're going to nod with me on this one, is where the audience don't clap, but they sit there with their mouths open.
Yeah.
You know, that's that moment of, oh my God, everything I thought was true about the universe has now been shaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is pure gold, you know?
It is. And I feel that...
But we don't think then, what do we do with that? we have that reaction. We have that thing. What we've done is we've shifted somebody's paradigm. They've opened up to the idea of other possibilities to the universe, and then we go, thank you very much, and walk away. You know, what? Why would we do that?
Exactly. And I think a lot of magic, you know, there is some very good cutting edge people. Like I say, there are people like Darren Brown, there are people like David Blaine, but people, rather than look at them and think, well, they're innovators, they just imitate them. So it's like when you get a band that comes out and they're a new band, like I suppose whoever came out Nirvana at the time, every little local band is trying to copy and sound exactly like them, rather than think, well, I'll take that idea and create my own new sounds. You know what I mean? You get a lot of that.
When I was into mentalism, you know, everybody had Darren Brown haircuts. I don't know whether they've all shaved their heads now. You know?
Yeah, and twitching their facial tics and
that's right.
Psychological
Darren Brown wannabes.
Growing a little goatee beard.
Business card. And the thing is, it's like, I mean, a lot of them just complain, they hate the fact that magic is seen as a children's thing, but then they perform very childish tricks with no meaning to them sometimes. You know what I mean? There's no depth or meaning. If there's no meaning to something, it's like that clip I sent you of Alexi Sale, where he's saying about Paul Daniels. He's saying, like, you know, he made this woman's handkerchief change colour and it's amazing. He must be a real magician. I don't know how he did it. He's got real powers. Why aren't you feeding the starving? Why aren't you curing disease? You know, if you had real powers or you were in control of magic, you wouldn't make one ball appear in the other hand or disappear or make a card change colour. You wouldn't do stuff like that. You know, you would do something useful with it. And so with with sort of like the more mystery entertainment, there's more that edge that someone's doing something useful. Do you know what I mean? Or something that has some meaning to it, or something that's relevant, you know?
There's an important point in all of that, you know, with the Alexis Sale thing, you know, like I was saying, that magic could do more. And, you know, we could let people go away with a sense of empowerment, you know. I mean, for example, I still do card tricks. I love card tricks, you know, I still like them. I think it's fascinating that you have, you know, 52 pieces of card in a small box that symbolize so many different things that you can do so many different permutations with, and there's so many classic and very clever ideas, you know, in card magic. But I'll always do it with some energy work, you know. I'll do it so that, you know, if there's a card going to change in somebody's hand, they'll feel energy come out of my hand, and they'll feel it affect them. And at the end of the day, they actually don't really care if the cards change. You know, it's the fact that they've experienced something that's outside of their paradigm. And in a way, that kind of like empowers people, I think, because it lets them be freed of their previous restrictions of what they thought was true, you know?
Yeah.
The thing is with card tricks is that magic, I think a lot of magic is 99% card. I mean, it's 99% card tricks. You know, if you look at the stuff that's available in Magic World, most of it, the majority of the bulk of it, is card tricks. And there's very little else. And I find that audiences, like the general audiences, are more interested in the other 1%. Because when I've had cabaret shows, I've had magicians come on there, they've done some things with other props and unusual props and stuff like this, and audiences are riveted by some of the unusual stuff. And then they say, well, anyone like to see a card trick? When they get the cards out, people groan. Because it's a cliche. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's like someone going into a guitar shop and playing Smoke on the Water. It's a real cliche it's become, and the public seems to turn off.
Absolutely. But you see, it depends what you do with them again. You know, I mean, to me, that's a challenge, you know. You get out cards, and then the audience expectation is that, you know, Uncle Chris is going to do a card trick, you know. And,
I think that's where bizarre magic and stuff is. You know, you could take out a deck of tarot cards, and as you say, that then grabs their attention because it's something that not the everyday person gets to experience or see. You know, it's a very everyday object to us. Tarot cards, you know, I've got them all sat around me, but your average person might not even want to hold a deck of them because of the urban legends and stuff that the misinformation they've been fed about them makes them mystical almost immediately. And
I agree. I agree with both of you. You know, that if you don't get cards out, or if you get cards out that are strange in some way, then, you know, it gives you a different slant. But also, if you get ordinary cards out, you do something strange with them. Is another way. You know, and to me, I mean, Freddie's dead right. You get out a deck of cards, and I go, oh, he's a magician. Oh, and then, you know, you always get them saying, oh, I know a card trick, and they want to perform their card trick, you know, and all this kind of stuff. But if you do something that is genuinely weird, you know, get them to feel an energy field or something of this kind, and the cards are just sort of like there in the mix somewhere, you know. then you're transporting that and you're putting it into something else, you know?
Yeah.
So it's different ways of approaching the same problem, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. To me, I find that you know, with magic, there's too many card tricks. There's so little other stuff. You know, when I was interested in it, I looked at other things. It's very hard to find things that aren't card-based. Magic is basically, you know, that's when you say about magic should progress and move on. I'd say that people should ditch the cards and find other ways to perform something interesting. Do you know what I mean? Because card tricks have been done at death. You know, that's the way I see it. I know that you can still do amazing things with them, but that's the reason why magic's not progressing or becoming interesting, because it's stuck in riddled old cliches and things that the public turn off.
I agree with you on the idea of cliches. I don't agree with you on the idea of, you know, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think that there are some amazing pieces of thinking that go on with card tricks, and those if you don't want to use cards, that thinking can be transformed into something else.
Yeah,
and used in some other way.
It's a bit like music. Every magician playing blues and nothing else, and no other style of music but blues, and saying we're going back to the roots, we're going back to this because it's traditional, and it's like just thousands of variations on
bad music.
Musical, yeah. You know what I mean? If that was the only music there is, you think, well, why is music not progressed? It's because everyone's playing the same bloody thing and using the same instrument, the same four chords. You know, that to me is what card tricks are like. That's why magic's got a bad impression, because of things like that. That's why I think it's to be a children's thing and very old-fashioned and cliche. That's why I think it's got that reputation.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, it depends what you do with it, Freddie. You know, we were talking about krautrock and Can, and you know, and Can use blues scales. You know, and you wouldn't think it because it sounds so strange. And still to this day, you know, it sounds strange, and yet they're still using the same chord progressions and the same scales as the old blues singers use. It's kind of like what you do with the thing. I mean, for example, I'm fascinated by cards. I mean, the concept of a deck of cards fascinates me, and the idea of what a pack of cards could have come from. You know, I don't believe their origins were. I believe that the tarot's origins were in gambling, but I believe ordinary playing cards go back a lot further, and there's a lot to explore in there, and there's a lot that you could do that reinvigorates the whole genre. You know. So there's different ways of approaching that same problem.
Yeah, I
do agree on the idea of, you know,
I think that's what's killing it, because every magician you see gets a deck of cards out, and that's why it's so old-fashioned. That's why it's considered it's not a move of the times. That's why Darren Brown, when he first came out, didn't do card tricks. There was no cards in his program whatsoever, and that's why people enjoyed him, because it was something different. They thought he was genuinely using psychology and stuff like this, because it was away from them. They didn't see him as a magician because he didn't get a pack of cards out. Yeah, that's what I think is.
Well, you know, Pete Turner won't for the same reasons, and I think that's a tragedy, because Dan, you saw Pete, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. Amazing, you know. That was my jaws on the floor, you know. And I'm thinking, you know, to me that was the most interesting stuff he'd done. You know, I had no idea how he did most of that, and I've been around, you know, a few years, and no idea. And to me, I felt, my God, I wish he'd stop the mind reading stuff and do more cards, you know.
So the thing is, though, every time you meet a group of magicians, you know, every single one of them gets their fucking pack of cards out and says, I want to show you a trick. It's like, how many fucking card tricks I've seen? Do I need to see another one? Do you know what I mean? That's how it's just, to myself personally.
Yeah, but what if the guy comes up, gets out his deck of cards and does something you've never seen before and never experienced before? Then, you know, it takes it into a whole new realm. What about if that guy gets out a deck of cards and starts explaining the symbolism, how they relate to the four elements? And
to me, it's still a card trick. It's still a card trick. To me, it's still a card trick. No matter what he's doing with them, it's still a card trick. It still makes him think he's a magician. He's a cliched magician. That's how a lot of the public would think as well, generally. You know, that's
to me, that just sounds like a challenge. You know, I'm thinking, well, I want to go and show Freddie something that.
If somebody did something amazing, like, you know, they had a pint of beer on the table and they made it levitate above your head and swirl, to me that would be stunning, or something like that. But a card trick is just, it's just clever. People don't see card tricks as magical. You know, that's the thing. It's like I've got some of my arguments about certain parts of magic, the cliches. It's like, the magic square to me is the most boring thing in the world. It's like Sudoku, you know. And
I've had people cry doing the card trick. You know,
boring, was it? Was it that dull?
I don't mean.
Was it that bored? Were they that bored?
Sometimes they cry out.
I'll cry if you do. No, it's like the Magic Square to me. It's like Sudoku. It's like, but it's also one of these sacred cows that you can't say it's boring. It's just basically someone putting numbers in. It all adds up to 25, and it's a smart ass saying, "Look how clever I am in maths." There's nothing magical about that at all. There's nothing.
Oh shit, Freddie, you're not going to like my new routine on the Magic Square much.
Oh, but that's the thing is, if magicians moved away from these bloody cliches, card tricks, and Magic Square, then something interesting might happen. That's what my argument is.
Magic Square coming out on Alchemy Moon is good.
I booked someone who was a magician. I won't say his name, but his act was very good. But when he did the Magic Square, that was the cue for people to go to the bar because they were bored shitless. Because it was just.
I mean, I wasn't actually joking. I'm bringing out the Magic Square, and for this reason, for that very reason, that we don't see the potential in things. For me, it's about emotionally engaging people, or engaging people on an imaginative level. And if you're just doing a mechanic and you're doing a trick and you're saying, "Oh, look, these numbers add up to this number," then of course it's goddamn crushingly boring. Because what's the best? The best you can get from a performance like that is, "Isn't that guy clever? Aren't I dumb?"
Yeah.
But I think there's a hell of a lot more that you could do with that. I mean, if you look at the history of Magic Squares and you look at where they come from, when they were actually magic, when they were Talamans, Loshu, Magic Square and stuff like that, you look at the metaphysical side of what they mean. And it's an absolute tragedy. It's kind of like indicative of what the tragedy of magic is, that magicians get up there and do a kind of maths teacher type job on it,
Yeah, I've never seen a presentation of Magic Square that I found in any way entertaining.
Not me, which is why I wanted to do just that. But
so is that something that's definitely in the pipeline? I was like, it leads me on to the next question. What are the plans for Alchemy Moon in 2015?
It's a difficult one. I mean, there's a lot of things. I think the big plan is that I came to the conclusion a few years ago that we've got enough magic tricks. I've got a blog up at the moment where I'm talking about that. It's the last post I put up.
Yeah.
And I think we don't need any more. We've got enough. And you've only got to buy a couple of the standard books and you're made for life. You don't need any more tricks. So I'm kind of thinking, I don't really see the point of bringing out more magic tricks unless it's to make money, basically. Which I will attempt to do still.
Of course, yeah. You still need to eat and stuff,
So there will be stuff coming out, but I think that me and the other people behind the moon are more interested in moving it away from traditional magic performance and into something that may still be performance. Because if you do a reading, it's still a performance. This is something that a lot of readers that haven't had an experience in entertainment don't really fully grasp.
Yeah.
But it's it's still entertainment, and it may be moving more towards that. We've been talking about this, and we've been talking about the idea of building up enough stock of non-magic stuff and then closing down Alchemy Moon as a magic shop.
Yeah.
And moving it into a different direction altogether. And this just reflects where we are, and it reflects where our thinking is. All that stuff I talked about becoming increasingly more embarrassed about the trick aspect of doing something. My biggest seller, for example, is Kadar, without doubt now. It outsells everything 10 to 1, and it's a reading system.
Yeah.
But it's a reading system with the magician's thinking behind it. There's no tricks there, but there's a structure. So it works. It works in the same way as a magic trick works, but there's no trickery involved.
Okay.
So in a way, that's the way that my thinking's going. Can you take what you've learned from traditional magic and put it into that new context? So more or less, can you create magic tricks that don't have tricks?
Got you. So you're kind of pushing the last room on the left at the corridor down at the asylum even further down.
Yeah, right down to the other end of the shed at the bottom of the field.
No, it's an interesting concept. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a very interesting concept, and it's going to be interesting to see how it goes and how it's received and stuff. I think it will take that with anything new. It will take a few people. It will take a bit of time for people to cotton onto it, but when they do, then you could be on to the next big thing there.
Well, I'm not really bothered about that, frankly. It's kind of like I've figured out my finances since I left work. I need to make £200 a month, and that's not that hard, And after that, I don't really care whether people, I kind of like do it for myself more, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
And if people are interested in what I do, that's great. I really do like that. I'm not. I don't want to give the impression that I'm just sort of like masturbating in a shed at the bottom of the garden for my own amusement.
What are you saying? You're saying I'm. What are you saying, Chris? I'm literally at the garage at the bottom of my garden, so I suppose it's not a shed. Although there are tissues all over the floor.
It was an analogy, I'm 56, so it was an analogy rather than a biological fact.
And for those, for people who've obviously you've been to Doomsday, have you been once or twice? Is it twice?
Twice, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to grace us with your presence this year?
I don't know. It's a difficult one because I think my wife's booked a holiday for that week.
Right. Okay.
Or around about that. I kind of like. I don't get out much.
Yeah, I think that's. I've got I can sort of sympathise with that. I'm one of those as well. But then again, I don't like going out much. I've turned into a bit of a Jack Nicholson. I like the being in the Overlook Hotel with locked in. And
I enjoyed it when I was there. It's kind of like I remember the first time I went there. Everybody came up to me and said the same thing. Oh, I didn't realise you were so old. Oh my God! But yeah, it was kind of fun. The last one was fun. I'll tell you the story one day about Prof BC's raffle.
Right, okay.
It's a long story, so I won't tell you now. But.
No, well, I think you're definitely a guest we're going to have on again, because this is probably the first show where we've had a frank and, a frank discussion about magic as a whole. And, as we said, we are for to support the bizarre magic community, but we've not had such a frank discussion on magic and other genres of magic and how well it's received. So I think the audience are really going to like this. So I think providing you want to come back, you'll definitely be another guest we'll have through the door without a doubt.
Yeah, no problem at all. I've probably been so frank I've lost all my customers along the way.
No. Because I think most of them,
the cafe.
Well, most of them are going to be on board with what you're saying, and.
Well, I hope so, because the thing is, if we're not imaginative and progressive in our thinking in our little particular corner of the art, then it's not going to happen anywhere, is it?
No,
exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Definitely not. Well, I think I'd like to thank you, Chris, for taking the time out today to have a chat with us. And
hey, what about the alien abduction?
Oh, yes.
Oh, your alien. Okay, we'll go for the alien. The show's going to be a long one, but I think this we'll go as.
Oh, you can do it another time.
No, we can do it. We'll do your alien abduction before you go. So, yeah, we've heard about this yesterday when we were bantering backwards and forwards on Facebook about what we're going to talk about during the show, and Chris mentioned his alien abduction, so this definitely piqued our interest. Look, go for it, Chris.
Well, it is interesting. Because I kind of thought one of the things I wanted to talk about is belief systems and what we believe in and how we believe it. I'll tell you the story first, and I'll tell you the explanation afterwards.
Okay.
It's kind of like, the story and then the routine.
Right, yeah.
Afterwards. Okay, so I'm lying on my bed and I'm asleep. I go to sleep and I wake up. I'm not asleep. I wake up and I start floating. And my body leaves the bed and it floats up to the ceiling. I'm wide awake.
Okay.
I'm 100% wide awake. In fact, I'm looking at the ceiling and I'm about, my nose is almost touching the ceiling, and I remember thinking, it looks a bit grotty up there, I really need to get and decorate this room, but I'm totally conscious. And then I can't remember what happened for a period of time. And then I'm in a corridor, and it's a black oinks or marble corridor, very smooth, and it stretches down a long, long way. And I'm being escorted, frog marched, forcibly taken down this corridor. And the corridor, I know that the further down this corridor, the more fear I'm going to feel. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm feeling terrified as it is. I'm trying to scream, but I can't scream. Now, all of the time, the important thing about this, for when I talk about it afterwards, is that it's real.
Okay.
I'm awake.
Yeah.
You know, I don't. It's not like a lucid dream. I'm awake. I'm fully conscious, and I'm being dragged down this corridor, and this terror is building in my chest, and it's indescribable.
Okay.
And it's getting more and more the further down the corridor I go. So I'm going down this corridor, and I know at the end there's a room, and in this room is going to be the most terrifying thing that I've ever seen. You know,
right.
Sounds like a nightmare. Sounds like a traditional nightmare. But I've got to impress the fact that I was awake.
Okay.
And I'm going down there, and then the door opens. I mean, I'd like to sort of like just saying I'm going down the corridor, because that's kind of like how it was. You know, it just went on for such a long time, and this idea of a build-up of fear.
Yeah.
And then the door opened, and there on this table is your traditional bog standard alien grey. You know.
Okay.
With a big head and everything. And I don't know whether it's dead or whether it's... I don't know why I'm there, what it's all about or anything like that. But I am absolutely overcome with fear. I'm screaming, but there's no sound coming out. And my limbs are locked, and it's absolutely terrifying. And it's the most terrifying experience I could imagine anybody ever having. You know, I'm trying to impress just how terrifying it was. And then I blacked out. There are other things that happened around this time. Somebody else, I've asked if I got permission to talk about this, and I haven't, but somebody else saw something really horrific actually in our bedroom at the same evening.
Yeah.
There was independent of me. And these things then started to continue and kind of like become more frequent. And I would do things like just plucking some out of the air. I would go to this little doorway and like a little triangle of light in a black space, and I'd be inside an alien spaceship, you know. But it was kind of like, what was weird about it was the realism of it, you know. There was no lights inside this other than these big, like, blackboards only made out of light, and all these little alien figures silhouetted walking about in front of it and everything like that. And I'm getting more confident by this point. I'm sort of like hiding, watching these guys, you know, and everything. So was I abducted by aliens? I think the answer is a very firm no, I wasn't.
Right.
You know? And so I'm left, because I had this, you know, I'm left in this position. I've had this experience. And this experience is one that I am absolutely 100% conscious of. There's no way that I'm thinking this is a dream. You know, that I'm just having this lucid dream, or it's a very powerful dream, and I'll wake up and all this kind of stuff. No, I'm there, I'm conscious, I'm awake.
Okay.
Now, this was going on at the period where I was actually going through quite a lot of stress in my life. And I think I was going fairly bonkers, to be honest.
Right.
I was in a job. I was a teacher, head of department teaching art in a secondary school. And various things were happening. But one of the main things for me was I was beginning to realize what education was. And it wasn't what I bought into when I went into education. And I realized I was part of a system that was torturing children.
Okay.
Creating people who were obedient. And that's the function of education. It's not actually to educate. Only a percentage. It's not to the rulers of the world's, you know, advantage to have intelligent people.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, you know, my job was not actually to make people more creative or intelligent. That's what I thought. That's what I said on a job description. But actually, you know, I was putting people through stress. You know, if you've worked as a teacher, and any teacher listening in will know what I'm talking about here, your job is to stress out children. to get them as stressed as possible, as fearful of their future as possible, so that they comply.
Yeah.
And this is becoming a huge problem for me because, I was again trapped in the system. I got a mortgage. I got to pay a mortgage. I got to go to work. Otherwise, I just... And so it's kind of like I was so far off the path that I should be on. I was doing something that was morally wrong as far as I was concerned, to pay the banks for something that they owned. And so I was under a lot of stress. And that stress, I think, created these experiences. And it's interesting because what I think I was having was sleep paralysis.
Yes.
Or apnea. And what happens because I went into this because I thought to myself, well, my first reaction was, oh my God, I've been abducted by aliens. Aliens are real. And they may be, but that was my first reaction because that was my experience,
Yeah.
And you tend to trust the experiences you have when you're conscious, because I was conscious.
Yeah.
It took some time to shift my perceptions to what the other alternatives could be. And I did look into the idea of it being sleep paralysis. And sleep paralysis is an interesting phenomenon, because you were talking, Dan, about your thing with the fairies.
Yeah.
How much that fits into the same thing.
Yeah, it's wasn't so much... this happened to me when I was really young, though. So I wouldn't say I was stressed out. So I just...
Well, you don't have to be stressed, I don't think, to get sleep paralysis.
Yeah. I have had sleep paralysis, though, and I had it when I was during my forensics career. And having heard what you've just said, I think, looking back now, my mind was under a tremendous amount of stress from looking at things that no sane human being should ever look at. And, I had a few bouts of sleep paralysis and the feeling that someone was sat behind me and things were moving around on their own, almost like poltergeist activity. And having heard you sort of come to the conclusion that it wasn't actually a real experience, but it was brought on by sort of more inner stress, the inner psyche. I can see that how that that could attribute to the stress as opposed to being a ghost at the flat.
Well, it's a complex thing, though, isn't it? Because
it is.
To the point where you think, well, what is reality anyway? Because all I do is I try to keep an open mind on everything. One thing I hate is a closed mind. I think there's nothing more dangerous than somebody who thinks that they have figured reality out and that reality applies to everybody else too.
Yeah.
And if we got rid of that, there would be no wars.
No.
So I do try to keep an open mind. So I know what my experiences were, and I have different realities of what that experience could be. And to me, the most sane experience was when I came across the idea of sleep paralysis. That's what it was. Because what happens in sleep paralysis, in a nutshell, is that when you sleep normally, you're in REM sleep, then the systems kick in to paralyze your body, basically.
Yeah.
So your body's paralyzed so that you don't get up and act upon your dreams.
Yes.
Which is where sleepwalking comes from, is when that doesn't happen and the person gets up and moves around, But neurotransmitters, the monoamines, start to kick in and stop you from moving. So you're literally paralyzed, but you can be awake.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could be totally conscious, but you're actually still dreaming, but you cannot move. So what you think is a dream, what you think is real is still a dream, but you're experiencing it consciously. This is very different to a lucid dream. If you have a lucid dream, it means that you become conscious within your dream.
Yeah.
And you are aware that you're dreaming, and you can then control your dream, and you can have fun and fly around wherever it is. But you're in a dream, yeah?
Yeah, of course.
it's kind of like sleep paralysis is the opposite, because you do not know that you're in a dream, but dream events can happen, and they happen as vivid. It's like, the most horrible LSD trip that you could take, because you are hallucinating, but you don't know. It's like somebody spiked your drink with LSD and you don't know that you've taken it. This is the worst thing, because you've got no explanation other than the explanation that it could be real. Now, if you look back at the history of ghosts, of little people, of aliens, of what, they all have the same pattern, and there's a consistent pattern that goes way back. I think could be explained by a lot of other really quite interesting things. I mean, for example, in the medieval period, everybody was high on LSD. Yeah. Or ergot of rye, which was a fungus that grew in rye that made people hallucinate. And that, sort of like combined with this, it's the same kind of thing, the succubus and the incubus that sits on your chest, and this feeling of terror. Because another thing that happens when you have sleep apnea is that you have the amygdala system come into operation. The flight and fight chemical gets pumped in. Yeah, it's got nowhere to go. So, you're not actually reacting to anything real. So you're getting this incredible feeling of fear.
Yeah, huge adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like, what can you do? So, this thing about the corridor is this is like just build up of fear that I can't do anything about, because this chemical's getting pumped into my brain that is, getting me to react in that particular way. But really, really interesting, in terms of understanding something about the history of a lot of things that people in bizarre magic are interested in. But then again, you see, that's not the end of it, because the other thing that I can't talk about, was very peculiar. And I've been doing a lot of going crazy over the Christmas period and drinking monatomic gold and watching weird stuff on YouTube and things like this, and sort of like looking into things that are way, way beyond my normal comfort zone, and reading into quantum physics, which is kind of like a really interesting field. You've got to be careful with quantum physics, though, because a lot of people use it as the science to explain weird shit. Yeah. Without really understanding what it's about, and I don't pretend for a moment to understand what it's about. I'm just trying, but. The idea of multiverses and interdimensional beings, there are people with PhDs that believe this stuff. Yeah. And, you can't rule any of that out. Maybe there is other things happening. Maybe you do get a glimpse when you're in these weird states. So what I'm not saying that these are hallucinations. They could well be, but they could also be altered states of consciousness. But here's the thing at the bottom of it. What is reality? Reality is what you interpret the sensations from your perceived external world to be. Okay. So it's kind of like what you create is your own reality by how you interpret those signals that come in. So I've interpreted this thing with the aliens as it's not aliens. It's something weird that's happening in my head. Right, okay. Somebody else would interpret it as aliens. Yeah. And for them, that would be true.
Well, what about obviously you haven't got the permission to talk about the other experience that happened in your room. How do you attribute that to what happened to you? If your experience was your perceived reality, then how could someone else have what I assume is a similar experience in exactly the same location?
Well, then you see that does actually raise questions then, because then it's not really straightforward. Oh, it's just me going mad. There is other phenomena at work then, and you have to consider what that phenomena might be. It becomes easier to understand. This is going to go very deep very soon now. Okay. But it becomes easier to understand if you see the universe as different to the rather mundane way that we are told that it exists in. For example, if you see everything as being energy. Yeah. Now, one thing that I do want to do is take some DMT at some point, because should I say what that is? Or
it's the world's strongest hallucinogenic drug, isn't it? I can't even pronounce it.
So it's the stuff that's actually produced in the pineal gland in small amounts, and it gives. I want that experience, not because I'm some kind of like, I am an old hippie, but that's not the reason. It's purely because people have had this experience, and I know a lot of people that have had to reevaluate what they think the universe is, and how it actually works. And the common denominator is that they see the universe as an interlocking energy field.
Yeah.
The individual and the world that we see is an illusion. And of course, Plato was saying this, this isn't like a new idea. And people before Plato, I'm sure. But I think if you start to see the idea that you don't end where your skin ends,
Yeah.
That there are other dimensions in different ways, of existence that all exist at the same time, then those kind of things become a lot more easy to understand, I've been looking at a lot of this stuff. Sheldrake stuff is very interesting. And the people that were involved in, the CIA far-seeing experiments in the 50s up to the 70s, people are still researching this. From the point of view of quantum physics, and looking at the idea of morphic energy fields and quantum realities, and we just it's kind of like, wow, this stuff is so far out from what we on a day-to-day mundane level understand life to be.
Yeah.
That in a way it kind of like opens, and there is a link back here to talking about magic, of course.
Yes.
As to the idea of the experiences that people have, and how, if this is true, and I believe passionately, but it is a belief, that it is true, then there's a mission to be had in waking people up, including myself, incidentally.
Yeah, just finding the way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that magic has some sort of like thing that can be done. I've just got 1 second. Answer the door. I'm doing a radio.
Somebody at the door.
That's the rest of my family turned up. So So at that point, it's a difficult thing. But I kind of thought it would be interesting to talk about the alien abduction thing, because I think when I started the story off, people would go, he's crackers. He's lost the screw, as we suspected.
Well, I think obviously in America there's a ridiculously high percentage of people who think they've been abducted by aliens, but maybe.
So what's happening?
Well, I think if you're talking about stress as of life being a trigger. But they're not looking any further than the fact that that they just had this vision of being abducted by an alien, and that's what they take it as, and therefore that's what it remains as. They have the fear and the that feeling, but it's actually the fear that's created by the stress of whatever it is that's the catalyst.
But then how do you explain the little metal implants in their neck afterwards then?
Oh yeah, there is that. The ones that if you try and dig them out, they bury themselves deeper.
Yeah. That
they can't actually ever get out, that no one's ever seen.
Is that actually true? Yeah. The problem is when you start to look into this, the whole thing with paranormal anything is that people polarize, and you get people who have an agenda to prove that it's true, and the people who have an agenda to prove that it's false, and you very rarely get people in the middle.
Yeah.
I've been looking at crop circles recently as well, because they suddenly became interesting to me, because I remember when the phenomenon first came out. Was it like in the early 80s or something of that kind?
Around that time, yeah.
Yeah.
There was this sort of like circles appearing, and I became fascinated. And of course, I jumped upon the idea that it was aliens. You see, the way that I work is this. Whatever the most interesting explanation, no matter how weird it is, that's the one I'm going to believe, because it makes my life more interesting.
Yeah.
Aliens, great, that's what it is. And then, of course, that famous documentary came out about Dan and Dave, the guys who made the crop circles, and they took them out in the field and showed these guys with planks on their feet making a crop circle. So I thought, okay, job done. It's Dan and Dave, I can leave this behind now.
Yeah.
But of course, what then happened, as I've got no interest in crop circles up until like a few weeks ago, what then happens is that these crop circles carry on appearing. And you think, why? If it's Dan and Dave, why are they still doing it? They've exposed themselves on TV, if you pardon the expression, and they're making ever more complex crop circles. And those crop circles are linked to sacred geometry. And you've got people that are like into geometry learning from the crop circles ideas about advanced geometry and stuff like this going on, Yeah. And there's all these kind of like weird things happening. So I get interested again. And I'm trying to research into it. And there's two camps. You read something by the believers, if you want, and it's aliens. It's got to be aliens. So you read that book and you think, yeah, they're right, it's aliens. These guys are coming down and making these crop circles. And then you read the other people, like the people who are making the crop circles, and you say, oh, no, it's not aliens, it's these guys. They're making it and they've explained it. And you don't get this sort of like thing in between. And I think the same is true of, implants. I mean, I don't trust any of the evidence that comes out without there being a balanced view,
No.
Of what is the science behind that? Anybody can, get an old top off a pen, like say, just come out of my neck, and you get enough people behind you agreeing with you, then it becomes, a fact for that community. It's all about belief in the end. It's, what people want to believe, or what they need to believe to make sense of their lives. But you see, there's a danger of missing out the interesting stuff. Because if you look at some of the, going back to crop circles, if you look at some of the more recent crop circles, they are enormous. They're incredibly complex. And you look at them and you think, there is no way that a human being could make that in a night. Overnight, a bunch of people in a field, in the rain, beating down crops with their feet. And then they, well, lo and behold, the next morning, that thing is there. So that's where my head is at. Until I actually see evidence of this incredibly complex thing that was made by people. They were filmmaking it, And so, but then you see, in that sort of like polarized view of black and white, yes and no, it's aliens or it's Dan and Dave, we miss out a really interesting story. Because nobody then thinks, well, why? What is going on? If it's people making things, why are they making them? How are they making them? Where are they getting the ideas for these complicated geometric forms from? Is it an art form? Is it something else? What the hell is actually going on? And if you start talking to those people, and I've been looking at some interviews with these people, it is freaking strange. As to what their motivations are, what their experiences are while they're actually doing this. The fact that these crop circles do appear to change the electromagnetic fields in that particular place, and the fact that they're all, around Stonehenge and Avebury and, all that kind of stuff. There's stuff that we just miss off the radar. So it's kind of like, it's a difficult thing, this whole business about, the paranormal. And there's different levels of it. There is a level where what you believe is true. I used to argue against Christians a lot because I think that organized religion has a lot to do with the misery of history. Of course, yeah, without a doubt. Now I don't, because I think, well, that is their reality, I still argue with them forcing that reality on anybody else. But, that's their reality, and who's to say that they're wrong? They're not for themselves. And if people want to believe in aliens, then they may be right. Who knows? Who knows? Well, I think this is definitely that's definitely the deepest the Mystic Menagerie has ever ventured. That is here at the Mystic Menagerie Mansions. We've never delved into the basement yet, but that's gone like. That's journeyed quite deep down, but it's brought up a lot of interesting concepts, and it's very interesting. There's definitely room for more shows in there. I mean, you triggered a few things in my head that I was gonna
bring up. I just thought I'd let you, sort of carry on and keep talking, because it was, it's so interesting, and you've got a lot of valid points there, and it is a funny old world we live in.
It
if
is,
indeed it is real.
I kind of think, just as a sort of concluding remark, I think that we are on the verge of something.
Yes.
In the world, and I don't know whether that something is our destruction, which it could well be. It certainly looks that way if you look at the way that the world's going, or whether that is something the opposite of destruction.
The world's always been in the same state, though. No matter what time of whatever period you take it at, it's always been in a state of self-destruction. I think it's just human nature.
Is it human nature, or is it something else? I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that we have an inbuilt aggression. That seems to be true. But how much of that aggression is manufactured and channeled to certain people's ends is another question.
It is.
But I think there are interesting times, because I think there's a counter thing happening. I think there's an awareness, and I am an old hippie, and I remember back in the 60s and the 70s, I was reading all the weird shit that was coming out, Stalking the Wild Pendulum and Supernature and all these books,
Yeah.
were things that were informing my view of what reality was. And now things are so much clearer. If you read into this stuff now, people have so much more of an advanced grasp on what is actually going on from what they were just a few decades ago. That it makes you think that there is something happening,
like an acceleration of knowledge.
Which is why, and this is my concluding remark now, which is why I wonder why magicians are still standing up on stage pretending that they know the word that somebody has pointed to in a freaking book.
And doing card tricks.
Yeah, well, potentially.
Yeah, true. Wow. I mean, as I say, the Mystic Menagerie has never gone quite that deep before, but it's definitely food for thought and very interesting. And it's been great having you on the show, Chris. It's been brilliant. Yeah, you've opened my my mind.
Pineal gland.
Yeah, my gland. Yeah, I forgot I was going to say. That gland. Yeah, it's been really great having you on the show.
Yeah, well, I've run out of monatomic gold now, so next time you might have me, I might be a bit more sane.
Cool. Well, we're definitely going to have you back probably later on in the year, and we'll continue our quest for the into the unknown, or as we'll see what else you've discovered.
If I'm still here, of course, I could have been taken by them.
You could be by those, but of course, they might come and get you now.
Absolutely. They might say, spreading these lies about us.
They're going to come and prove the point.
You're off to Sirius with us.
The Age of Aquarius. Excellent. Well, thanks again, Chris. It's been wonderful having you on.
Cheers, Chris.
And good luck with Alchemy Moon. And I've no doubt I'll speak to you soon anyway. So,
Sure thing.
All the best. Take care, mate.
All the best. Take care, mate.
Okay, bye.
Is such a thing even possible? Yes, it is.
Welcome back, and it's been a very interesting show and a very fascinating one this time, and a lot of deepness from Chris. Has been a great guest, and we've had a great time. We hope you have as well. So we'll be back soon, and like we said in the show, we're going to announce the details of the Patreon, which is going to be live soon, and we should be back with another Mystic Menagerie soon. So from Dan and myself,
thanks a lot, and it's been a wonderful show, and we'll see you in a few weeks' time.
Yep, bye-bye.
Yeah, take care, goodbye.